Hello, everybody. Welcome to the LJL Officially Unofficial Podcast, Season 2, Episode 15. MaskedSwan here, host as the most. I, of course, am joined by the refined man in the middle, celebrating our birthdays very close together, sir.
Indeed. It's a great month to have your birthday, to be honest.
Best month.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, that's because you're not the best. That's why.
Yeah.
What can I say? But yeah,
welcome.
it's come with a new chair and a new setup as well. I'm joining you in the green screen gang, or blue screen in my case.
VFX department at least. And of course, I would be remiss if I missed out on announcing the prestigious Nymaera. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Certain eyes are on you, apparently, so you're rising.
This is apparently the dry run for other places where I might be talking about the LJL. See, I don't have any of this like VFX.
Nothing's confirmed or anything.
I have practical effects in my background. You know, I'm like the connoisseur of effects.
I mean, so what is this podcast, Nymaera?
What is this podcast? We use this time to talk about Japanese League of Legends, which is notably the LJL.
And do we have any association with Riot Games, their partners, or anything to do with Big Daddy Riot?
We do not. We do not. Sorry, I had a little bit of lag there for half a second.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
So it took a second to come through, and then everything came through real fast. But no, we are not sadly associated with Riot or any of their subsidiaries. We do this all off our own back, which does give us a certain amount of freedom, though, to chat absolute shit.
It absolutely does.
We do.
And you can find this podcast on all audio streaming platforms out there. But if you are like many out there, Nymaera, what should they be doing over on YouTube?
They should be liking and subscribing, because we love to get our names out there. We love to have the support for us three and the content that we make. It makes us feel very gratified and valuable.
It does. It strokes our ego even more so.
Yes, it does.
And obviously, with the audio podcast, go over to the app, iTunes, or any of your locations in which you can rate this podcast and rate it 5 stars or 1 star and tell us that we're terrible or the best. It doesn't matter age.
Oh, you're cutting out a bit, Lexi. It might be a threshold thing, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Threshold.
But anyway, you can find all of our social media accounts below each of our faces as at MaskedSwan, at Initia1ise, and at Nymaera. Gentlemen, this is going to be our MSI episode. We're going to be running down, kind of explaining MSI to anyone that isn't quite following or is for people how MSI is going to be working. We're going to be explaining the format, giving an overview of the participants as a kind of general overview. We'll then break down the pools while we're doing the participants, and then we will go into groups. We'll spend some time talking about Group A and Group B, just so if DFM happens to make it further, we've already got a few impressions there. And then obviously we're going to probably spend most of this episode actually talking around Group C, and that's going to be the real meat and potatoes. It's also where a lot of your listener questions came out. We will be interspersing them when they're relevant out.
Especially if we're
Group
cover
C's
them
part.
already in a topic. There's no point doing that and then covering it again in the questions. So we'll try and thread them through as we can.
But obviously, 1 or 2 of them, I think, from when I was reading through, are probably going to be slightly better to do at the end. So we'll do it at the end. Don't worry, we will cover everything. Next week is basically the day of MSI, so when the podcast will be going out. So probably going to be something live around then, as we're planning to do some live coverage for MSI. Hold off though. Discord, follow our Discord server, follow us on Twitter on the LJLOU official account, and we will keep you all updated on there and do our due diligence. But, gentlemen, MSI is almost here, and the boys are in the top 4. Well, the main 4 boys are currently 4th to 8th in solo queue at the moment, and the new arrivals. Like, I mean, we're the best outside of Showmate.
You say that,
I
but so there have been a couple. So obviously we're talking about all of the US solo queue accounts, which are of course interspersed around the place. But so DFM members have played against Damwon members about 3 or 4 times. I think they've won every single game so far. So if you want to read into solo queue and stuff like that, looking pretty good for DFM right now. They're all up there. Diamond 1. I don't think any of them have reached Master yet. I think only Khan and Canyon have out of the entire arrayed pros. But yeah, no.
Well, Showmaker got denied his promo by Aria.
By Aria.
It was a brutal game.
It was a really good game. It was a really good game because what's really good is we're now seeing like people going like, wow, this 22-7 Rise just absolutely crapped on these RNG members. Like, yeah, that was Aria. Have fun with that. So yeah, at least we're getting some comments on Reddit and being like, so we can kind of like go striding in and go like roll up the sleeves and going to talk about our region a bit.
And we absolutely can. I mean, Initialize, what have your thoughts been on while seeing the first few days of solo queue? Because it's literally first few days.
I think it's been really good to see that these guys specifically Steel, Ebby, Aria, Utapon have come up, basically said, still playing the same champions, we're still hitting 70+% win rates. Hell, Ebby and Aria in particular, up at that 75+. Steel and Ebby rather, like 80% plus at this point on their win rates. Playing, Ebby's playing everything from Rumble 11. To Akali to Renekton, and it's good to see these guys coming in. And yes, it's not like top tier challenger yet, but they are being matched with that kind of MMR.
Well, that is the
Canyon,
MMR, so yeah.
Khan, I mean, so exactly. So the thing is, like, even if the ranking's not there, they are going up against these guys, pulling out the stuff that we want them to see, rather than just sort of like narrow solo queue picks, and still looking really good on it, and that's great to see. Aria's on Silas, on Rise, on TF, and still smurfing. Ebby's on
these are
Renekton,
multiple
on Rumble, doing really well with stuff.
All of these players are challenger in Korean solo queue. So this is going to be partially a cakewalk for them because they're used to playing on a harder solo queue. They're used to playing on 30 ping from Japan to Korea. This is no different for them, and they're like, 30 ping.
Even. It's pretty high.
But they're still doing fine.
Right. And again, not to buy back into like the season 5, 6 means, like worrying trend, Diamond 2, all that kind of thing. Because actually solo queue ranking is to an extent largely immaterial when it comes to actually turn up on stage, right? But it is something of like, it is a bow to the string, right? It's something to say, actually, these guys have turned up, they're looking good, they're playing picks which look like they could be good in the current meta, and are at least showing mechanical prowess against guys like Canyon, Khan, Showmaker, these other guys who are, actually the reigning world champions. So the fact they are at least able to throw down against them is great news to see.
My worry is that, obviously before Worlds 2020, we were saying, okay, wow, Ace is doing really well in solo queue. Boogie, Archer doing really well, and then Ace kind of got crapped in lane and V3 fell apart. I mean, it's a good start, but it doesn't end there, of course. You can't read into it too much. The fact that it seems like that they're all picking up stuff like the Rumble and new picks, though, seems pretty good. We knew that DFM had big champion pools, so just, again, adding more strings to the bow.
And I mean, this is DFM. This is the team that we wanted to send. We got what we wanted. They're now performing well in solo queue. Like, hey, part of the reason I remember when Ace was climbing up and became one of the highest. He was the highest mid laner from any minor region. Yeah. And was like still top 3 or 4 in mid laners in solo queue in this Chinese super solo. A lot of that was credited to Aria actually helping out and giving him so it's like, well, what about if the boot camper is now the one doing the practice? Right? Yeah. Like it's kind of crazy. But gentlemen, we probably should. I took us on a complete derail from our script.
If I could have like 1 second before the tangent ends, Lexi.
Absolutely, go. Do it now.
I've been quite excited by Steel's champion pool. Just saying, if you guys want to go check out that Tracking the Pros website and click over some of those names, Steel's been hitting some impressive Rumble Morgana Jinzhao stats.
Yeah.
Which is as far as like, okay,
partly
that's
because
fun.
Aria and Steel have been duoing as well, so they've been duoing as much on Joe. And they beat Showmaker. They beat Showmaker and Malorang, who's the Damwon sub playing. That was a really fun game. Anyway, seriously, go check them out in solo queue if you got time. It's been really fun to watch.
One of our community members, I'm awful. Hina, she's been streaming all of the DFM games on her Twitch channel, so shout out to her. Yeah, she does.
The blogs and everything that they're putting up. So yeah,
I've been seeing that on Twitch. It's been amazing.
Sunshine Hina on Twitch. Someone like Lonely Hikikomori on Twitter.
We can link it below the thing.
Links will be in the description, and we'll add it to the show notes. We'll make sure to remind me to do that, so that doesn't get out. But
I'll make a note.
Thank you. But she's been an amazing community member, and it's fun to see more people making LJL content.
Absolutely.
That's what we're all here for. That is
we'll
what we're here.
encourage it.
We will absolutely shout it out when we see it, and give a pat on the back, because that's how we started, and that's how VCS English guys got us going. Yeah. Remember, they gave us a pat on the back all that time ago. Shout out again over to our VCS. We will be giving a little short section, and do we do a memorial for them, or do we say grace for those guys?
I'm not sure if I've got sad music queued up. But...
Let's explain the format before we go into that sad little part, because the format is actually pretty unique. This is a different MSI structure to what we've ever seen. This isn't completely unique, if I remember everything from All-Stars and everything. It's taking a bit of ideas from a few different tournament structures.
Season 3 Worlds it was similar to?
Something like it felt familiar to me, and you know what? There's like that weird break where I'm just like, I have no idea, and you're like, Juggernaut meta. I'm like, what's that? And I'm like,
you're just haunted out there in the past.
Cinder Hulk patch.
Yeah. But I remember Red Pot meta, so I'm like,
oh boy.
Yeah. I will do stage 1. Initialize, you'll do stage 2, and Nymaera, you'll explain stage 3 and the kind of overview for it. Stage number 1, ladies and gentlemen, will be groups. This is the teams are drawn into 3 groups based on their seeding, which we're going to be going over in a bit. It's a double round robin for group B and C, and it's a quadruple round robin for group A, because sadly VCS weren't able to be there. Matches are best of 1. And the top 2 teams from each group advance to stage 2. Now, what is stage 2, Initialize?
It's called the Rumble, apparently, and I'm looking at this book because I hadn't known about this until relatively recently. So it's still one of those things like, this is a new bit of the format, and I'm not entirely sure. Like, I'm still kind of like, I'm going through, because in some ways I'm like talking with some guys in the journalist world.
We've lost Lexi to the machine spirit. Let me quickly
Have we? He's fine on my end. Interesting.
Okay, well, not OBS, which is the important thing.
That's the OBS is the important part.
I'll be back.
So like, in the Rumble stage, just like basically all the 6 teams who've kind of like made it up a little bit further into this stage 2 will play a best of 1 double round robin. So basically everybody's fighting off against each other. It's kind of the pseudo new group stage area. Is the deal. As thumbs up comes back, we're all there. So think of this in some ways as groups are kind of semi-play-ins now. The Rumble is kind of new group stage, but it's what MSI was. So everybody who's gotten into the Rumble stage then plays off against each other. So at that point, you start to get RNG versus Down1 versus Cloud9. And so it's not just kept into the groups. So exactly, this is kind of a way of allowing some of these play-in teams to get some experience against these bigger teams. And then you still get that old school MSI best team versus best team guaranteed.
And then when we have our top 4 now, we've lost 2 more. We get to a knockout stage, and Nymaera, we know this system, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So after that point, you have the top 4 teams play off against each other. I believe it's seed 1 versus seed 4, or it might be it might be that. Or
one would assume, right?
I'm trying to remember if it's first choosing 3rd or 4th, but effectively we then go down to a best of 5 elimination bracket, single elimination, none of that double elimination bullcrap in here. So it is semi-finals into finals, best of 5. Effectively from the from the Rumble stage onward, stage 2, it is the same as previous MSIs. We just have this almost play-in like format for the groups. That's just kind of been tacked on.
Yeah. So let's have a quick talk about what our thoughts on this kind of system, because we are of the opinion that we have one of the best systems in the LJL when it comes to knockout and playoffs, and really astounding and making sure the best team, even with a bit of a hiccup, can be the team that actually end up representing and end up being the overall champion of the tournament. How do we each feel about the opportunity here? Obviously, Group A will go into more detail when we actually talk about Group A, but we have to obviously mention that is a quadruple round robin, so that's going to be a lot of games around those teams. So
there's a reason for that.
Yeah, absolutely, right.
Sadly, because you can't say to your sponsors, we are going to have these games and your sponsor will be on it. Oh, a team dropped out. No, you have to replace it with something, and they've had to do it with this. So yeah, it's going to be pretty harsh format for Group A, but from a monetary TO side of it, they didn't really have an option. It sucks, but it's what it is.
No, plus I think if you are effectively going to have a team drop out, then I think in some ways the two options in some way, well, three options you have is either just do it as like without the team there and play less games, which again,
Sponsors don't
as
like
far
that.
as the TO is saying, it's like it's not that
Probably
viable.
not. Yeah.
You bring in another team somehow, so maybe the LCK or LPL.
But then
get
that's a
second
whole
team
nother
is.
logistical thing,
Well,
right?
exactly, which is kind of what happened last year with Worlds and China getting a fourth
Yes.
seed in. But
Yeah.
but again, Worlds perhaps is a different matter where you are getting more teams in anyway. MSI is supposed to be
Yeah, it's
just
breaking
the
the
top
precedent.
teams. So it would be breaking a precedent, and so you can see why that one's a bit awkward. And the last option, which is say, okay, well maybe we just have these teams play more games.
I think they went with the best one.
It makes
really.
sense. Like again, I think in some ways as well, it means you're still having to play more games, right? And therefore there's still a little bit like, particularly in a group with 3 games, like if you then have one upset, it skews so much more than any other group, which potentially just stats wise in terms of weighting of every individual game is perhaps then a little bit like unfair to certain other groups.
I mean,
so I can understand, and it already kind
yeah.
of is, it's only 3 teams in there, so I think in some ways I can understand also when you do that on a sort of like,
well, I
potentially
remember
just like how much is every game worth kind of point of view.
Yeah, I remember us. I don't know if we did this on last week's episode of the podcast or if this was just a conversation we've had off stream, the three of us. But we were like, oh, sorry about that. I was wondering. We were obviously saying, oh, what about you could try and get the EU Masters winner? And then we actually looked at it. I was like, oh, you just can't logistically get them there and there.
Well, because of visas, really. Realistically, it's because of visas.
And I mean, a big problem of this is just showing the lack of international competitions around League of Legends. But then that kind of comes with the problem that they wanted to do established leagues and everything, and now we're seeing kind of that knock-on effect from it, right?
And also the failure of Rift Rivals to really be a big draw.
Yeah.
Because Rift Rivals, I think, would have been great for the last year of competition. Rift Rivals would have been awesome just to kind of take down that kind of that flaw of logistical power you need to put on an event because it's more within one localized region rather than flying people halfway around the globe, and it gives international competitions to the likes of your VCS, your LJL, and your PCS, and whoever else is in that area. Right? I would have loved to see LGL, PCS, VCS last spring, having DFM versus GARM versus Talon coming out of that one. That would have been really good fun. But again, because things evolved so quickly within the pandemic, it was very hard to set that up in advance. So obviously you can't really blame them for it. But however, last year, it would have been really good to see that. And yeah, I think, as Lexi's saying, because of the amount of time on a schedule... Well, this is kind of a problem that Rugby Union has as an international calendar.
Yes,
just by having leagues and
the
ability, you have to support multiple levels of play. It's not all about this international stuff. It's not all about the regional stuff either. There needs to be a balance, and right now the international side of it has obviously suffered in the last year or two.
I mean, this is all coming back to partly of the conversation about Riot Con or Riot or the League of Legends Con, but it'll be Riot Con now because they'd have Valorant there, TFT, Runeterra.
In some ways, that could be quite good fun.
Project
I could see them pulling.
But logistic-wise, where do you put it on the schedule where it doesn't come in?
Off-season. When you would know when you
but
do.
When is off-season for all your games?
Well, in that case, what you would do is you'd probably do it when All Stars was, and have All Stars be like.
You can't now because Valorant.
Well, the thing is, you'd have like a Valorant major there. Is probably what you'd do.
Oh, I mean that's a.
And then you'd have like a Legends of Runeterra comp and a TFT competition.
Oh, the problem with that is that if you never have an off season for League, you're gonna have a situation like season 5 to 6 SKT where they are at every tournament for 2 years straight, and they're gonna burn
and it kills everybody.
And you get people like Wolf, who, while he was one of the best players of support players of all time, he's gonna be on anxiety meds for the rest of his life. So, good job with that.
Yeah, well, I mean. I think there's also something to say for like actually that kind of tournament then in some ways needs to be invitational or fun because actually for certain teams you don't get to go to an international
rather than a qualifier. If it's an invitational, it's different.
Yeah, or it's one of those ones which basically you can all turn up and you just play like a bit like Dota 2 where you can just turn up and play through the qualifiers if you want, right? And so for teams that go actually,
Masters teams might make it through though.
Yeah, exactly. For teams to say, look, I understand you guys don't want to take this seriously because actually. It's a brutal schedule, but then for teams that would never get to go to an international, this is the way to go for it. I
actually really love this idea of an open tourney for RiotCon where you could just have a bunch of like you need to have like certain requirements.
Teams turn up and stuff. Like have Carmen Corp turn up.
Well, I think you just do open online qualifiers, right? You just do it in regions and be like, hey, if you are the top 3 team in the open qualifier, and professional teams can't play in them, right? They can just be like, we'll do a separate thing for the professional teams because they don't need the notoriety, they don't need the marketing, and they'll probably be at the events anyway. They don't need to play in this.
But they can turn up. But then in some ways, I can understand actually saying it's good to have some time off for people, and I can also understand, look, if you guys want to come along for fun, that's fine, but please understand, it would be a bit of a nightmare. I can understand it being a nightmare for people. So you'd have to almost organize it saying, okay, you turn up and you're playing the dumb games and stuff that are there. And you kind of make it a bit, and then actually you
similar
have
to like the Red Bull Sphere kind of stuff in the
UK.
UK.
So like, or exactly, or it's sort of things like maybe like, I don't know, who's be a good example? So Origin from last year, who like was a good team but failed to make it, they could give it a go because they didn't go to the international tournaments, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
Lineup that went to EU Masters, right?
Yeah,
maybe.
Like Expect, Insec, Froggen, Forgive, and Jazzers. That lineup was so cool, and you obviously turn up to EU Masters. But like, also what that does is it removes the regional requirement for things. So you can have, minor region teams or your GUMs or whatever, or teams from Vietnam or your LJL or your PCS that aren't really on the radar and really make a splash there and get the names out. And there are a lot of teams who are trying to do that, like no org with the NA amateur scene. Anyway, gone a long time on this, but I think it's a really interesting conversation about. It's a really larger conversation about international format of League anyway, because like
this is why
NA is already trying to buck that bridle, right? It's already.
And then we're immediately like, no, come back. I mean, gentlemen, this is why in the off season, over summer, we should probably think about a separate League of Legends podcast where we don't talk about the LJL.
Because, probably.
We could still chat some crap for an hour or two, and I'm sure there'd be some poor people that would depressively listen and go, I enjoy this and I don't know why, but anyway. Gentlemen, we need to actually talk about the actual participants in MSI. Perfect. Thank you, producer Nymaera. Now, we're not going to go super deep into each of these teams because we're going to do that in the pool section. But it's important that we briefly talk about the teams and how they got here. So are we going in the order that it's China, EU, Korea, NA, PCS? What's the order on screen now?
On screen, I've got like Group A, Group B, Group C, the one that they had on LoL Esports Twitter. Okay. So it's effectively, so it's got all the Group A teams on the left, Group B in the middle, Group C on the right.
Nice.
Absolutely. Okie dokie. Right, I can do this. So Group A, we have Royal Never Give Up, who won in the finals versus Fun Plus Phoenix in a 3-1 best of 5. Even though FPX had beaten them before, FPX seemed to kind of fall off the rails a little bit in that game. But I'm not a super knower of the LPL, so I'm not going to put more of my thoughts in there. Any other thoughts about Royal Never Give Up very briefly?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting one. Obviously, they had a very much an upper and a lower bracket system. Like the LPL playoffs are long and hard, especially if you are lower seeded. And
good to throw on in the background.
Oh yeah, and it's, I tell you, some of those games were really quite special because actually it looked for a while that people like FPX and Top Esports were going to be the ones that were going to.
Oh, I thought FPX were going to take
exactly.
it.
They came through and actually, then EDG took down. Was it? Top Esports, FPX took down RNG the first time. They looked like they had people figured out, and then RNG did RNG things and came back through and managed to find a way to get top.
They never gave up.
Yeah, pretty much.
No,
also like also they're one of the few teams that consistently play through top. Like Xiaohu with the lead is a really good top laner, especially because he's role swapped. For anybody who's not really been following or doesn't necessarily follow the LPL super closely, you might remember that Xiaohu was for the longest time RNG's mid laner.
We'll cover him a bit more in the Group A section.
Of course. Yeah. But anyway, the fact they came through and they did, of course, we'll talk a bit about it a bit more. But anyway, they managed to get him working really well in the finals. And his Gnar is just actually stupid.
Yep. Unicorns of Love made it through as the number 1 team from what is that league called? The LCL. That is
from the CIS region.
The CIS region. They beat Crew Crowd in a 3-1 series. I know a lot of people were expecting it to go to the full 5 games over in that one, but it ended up actually being Unicorns of Love kind of regaining their form. They had been pretty disappointing through the regular split, from my understanding, but they very much kind of turned on. It kind of playoff buff kind of well and truly turned on for this team, and they looked nigh on unstoppable throughout playoffs. But that's it, really. Unicorns of Love, guys, thoughts?
I mean, in some ways, it was a big surprise, right? Because they only the top 4 teams out of the 8 get through,
Yep.
and Unicorns of Love came through 4th. They were their
Straight
first round
down.
against Gambit, who were on potentially the guys to win it. They were 1 game off being first themselves. They were on an 8-game win streak. And obviously Gambit have now left the scene after this playoffs as well. So obviously they lost to UOL in the semi-finals, first round of playoffs to UOL, and then they took down. And in fact, it was a bit of a bizarre one because Crow Crowd, beat down One Breath Gaming, who were the first place team in the regular season, 3-0 in the first rounds on the other side. So the first and second seeds from the regular season both fell out, and then
bombed, yeah,
UOL. It was basically an inversion of the 1 through 4. So 4, 3, 2, 1 had basically switched places. It was kind of bizarre, and UOL looked pretty good coming out of playoffs, even if their regular season wasn't as clean as they would have liked.
Anything else to add?
I mean, obviously UOL had a really strong showing at last Worlds. They got out of play-ins. They, they got into the main groups, and yeah, they didn't have the groups that they would have really wanted, given their dominance, and thought, well, maybe you can snatch a game off a fly quest or like that. Didn't really end up doing what they wanted to within groups. And this
but they made it out. That's more than we can say.
Exactly. And they're a much beloved team, so they have that going for them. And it was also that their team at UOL's first time at Worlds, which is they didn't manage to do it in the ULCS, but they managed to do it in the LCL. The question is, of course, whether they're going to come in as confident and as collected as they were at Worlds play-ins, because they were a force to behold last play-ins. They were very innovative. They pulled out a lot of new stuff. They really captured the hearts of a lot of viewers. And yeah, they kind of slapped V3 around a new one, which is kind of sad. But it was a really fun game, so we appreciate them for that. Can't wait to see what they bring to MSI this time.
Absolutely. And the last and final team for Group A that will be playing is going to be Pentanet.gg. They are a team from the LOC, formula of the LCO, thank you. Formerly of the OPL. Obviously, that is a huge change. Most notable thing that I know about this is Pabu, who has been a player on the region for years and years and years. His first international debut, finally, for the poor guy. After role swapping from top to jungle, he's been able to make it in. So huge congratulations to them there. Outside of that, I have zero information to give on them. I can look quickly at the standings. They beat Peace in a 3-1 game. I haven't watched that game, and I can't say anything else because I don't know anything else about this team. Sorry. I can't follow every minor region and be on top of everything.
It's been weird for the LCO anyway, because obviously over the off-season, the OCE region effectively disbanded. So they were keeping their spot, but it was like an open tour that wasn't really being organized by Riot, and it was just they're keeping this
DreamHack that does it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think now somebody else
ESL
has now come in to step in and put something in place coming forwards, which is good news, I think, for the Oceanic region. But this is also why a lot of the OCE players have joined the Academy system and the LCS, because effectively Oceania is now considered home territory for the LCS. So they don't take up import slots. Hence, Fudge being on the C9 roster, etc., etc. So it's been a weird one, but
100 Thieves and whatever.
Yeah, exactly, that kind of deal.
Well,
FBI possibly as well, I think, is in on that one. Yeah.
Well, he's on a contract still.
True.
Yeah. But it's obviously people like Pabu, who's been to loads of All Stars and stuff. It's great to see him come through. I think you're absolutely right.
And obviously, this region had its talent pool gutted, as Initia1ise was saying. So this is a rebuild stage for them. But if they can keep having people come through the system and they can keep promoting people, hey, it means there's more competitive League of Legends happening, which just means that very small amount of players that might be the next Fudge have their opportunity, which honestly, it's more than we can say about the UK. So.
Yeah. So
I'm happy to go on
the one caveat for a team like this is some teams do much better outside of a league format, and they do much better with a dedicated boot camp for an event.
Very true.
Moscow 5 Gambit. They were the team which did that. Do I think that Pentanet GG are going to do that? Not particularly. But there's always the caveat that if they get really good prep because they've managed to get some really good prep time in and boot camp for the event effectively, maybe they show up and take a game off of one of these. I mean, it's a quadruple blast and 1 round robin, so there is every chance that they take. I don't know. This is the thing. I look at UOL and they still have like Boston and Nanosic in the jungle, and like their top side of the map is very strong, where Biopanther and Pabu are as well, and just they're like, you're probably not even beating them. Then you got to go against RNG, the best topside team in the world. So I don't think they're going to get many games out of this group, if any. That's the problem. I think they're up against two stylistically bad matchups. It's difficult.
Yeah. Let's cover the last group, the last team that was going to be in this group, and then let's do a holistic opinion on this group overall, because it seems like we've just kind of worked into this way, so we're going to keep going like this, because I like the format so far. VCS's GAM Esports was fucking robbed, and there's they beat Saigon Buffaloes in a 3-1 best of 5 series. It was a good series to go watch
series,
that one.
Yeah.
The VCS English guys did an amazing work on their production. Shout out to them. Really good job there, lads. But fuck, dude.
Sucks.
GAM,
Sucks.
like, I can't imagine what it feels like to be those players. I can't.
No, because I look at that group. GAM makes it out. GAM makes it.
Oh,
out.
GAM.
I'm sure. Like, I don't know when you want to cover like our predictions for the groups at all, but like, I think I'll just say
at the end of each of the groups, I think is fair. So yeah, now if you want to start doing it, yeah, let's go.
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously RNG are favorites in this group. But
100%.
GAM, if they could definitely take one game off of them.
They would have been my favorite for second easily, and I think they would have actually potentially made RNG's life real hell, because if anybody knows to roam at ridiculously early times and just start a bloodbath in the top lane with them, GAM would be right up there.
And particularly Kati, their mid laner, has missed out on now 3 back-to-back international events because
in a row.
I knew it was one of them. I couldn't remember who.
Sad.
Kati. So he was on Flash in 2020, and then
that's right.
Now he's switched over to GAM for this split. GAM are such an interesting team to watch. I did criticize the VCS for not actually understanding how to play their team compositions. They just like to fight, but they fight really damn well. Like, they'll be playing with champions.
They do.
Like, I'm not sure they really fit together in the way. It's like that word. It does not mean
just
and
they just kind of smash and congeal.
Yeah, very, exactly that.
Very Inigo Montoya from Princess Bride. Just that word. You keep using it, but it doesn't actually mean what you think it is. Except it does when you're GAM, because they work off their own dictionary, and it is going to be such a shame not to see the VCS again, because they are one of my favorite regions to watch. Not just because we have personal connections with the guys that cast it for their.
But they were so much fun.
But they're so fun in this region. They had if you go and watch it, Tim Sven, I keep forgetting his last name, but effectively the Oracle's Elixir guy. Oracle's Elixir Tim. He kind of put up some stats.
Tim Spitz.
I wasn't going to attempt, because I didn't want to be disrespectful.
I remember. Oh no, because this was a meme they were doing on the Travis Gafford podcast, and I was like, fuck. Now I feel bad now, and now I'm like, because I literally DM'd the guy earlier.
Yeah. Anyway, he was just like, he was sad that it's been like, yeah, GAM have the best early game stats. They have incredible kills per minute, the shortest game time, and they win.
Right?
Yeah.
And that the thing is, that's just the whole VCS as well. Like, they are all in on this whole idea of hyper aggression. You think the LPL used to be the hyper aggressive region? They've slowed down.
Actually, LPL.
Yeah.
LPL are very good game team fight. They do occasionally do those early game skirmishes, as they are wont to. But VCS is really the chuck the baby out with the bathwater thing. They just chuck everything out, everything at you.
They are the innovators on that old school system, yeah. And I mean, think Jace, teamfight champion, TF, teamfight champion, like Carthus, pre-6, teamfight champion, Skada, pre-6, teamfight champion. It's like, what are you doing? Why? And they somehow make it work because they're really good at skirmishing, whatever the champion may be.
I just feel really bad because potentially we've missed out on a whole metagame evolution just because one of the key players hasn't been there, and coming from a background that was all about metagame evolutions. This is something where a professional team could have easily just gone, yeah, but is it just the region? And you can't properly know until the best team from that region plays internationally, does well with it, and then everyone starts going, huh, maybe we're actually playing this game a little bit wrong. Maybe we could be playing it slightly differently and getting better results because we're better at these certain fundamentals which actually get rewarded. We'll never know now because we'll have to wait and see if VCS are able to make it into Worlds due to current events. But our hearts are very much out there. So, gentlemen, let's give our predictions for group number A. I mean, I assume we're all going RNG number 1, probably 6-0ing. 5-1ing, 6-0ing, right?
I
Yeah.
reckon. Well, this is the well, it's not even going to be that, remember, because it's a quadruple round robin.
Oh
Mm.
god,
I think
yeah.
that RNG are not going to have a perfect group. I think they're going to lose one to UOL, but I think they'll 3-1 them.
That's probably fair.
I think that UOL will snag one game off of confident early play snowballing the game. I think that UOL.
So 7-1 for
I think
RNG is what we're saying.
7-1 for RNG. I think that because again, I know there's a question in here about upsets at some point. I feel like because UOL and the way that they are very weird by the way they play. Again, if GARM was in this group as well, we have the two most weird innovating teams of the last couple of years. I think that UOL will catch RNG napping at some point. I don't think Pentanet GG are going to do the same. That's kind of.
Oh, I'm expecting them to go 0-8 in a sad way.
It's so many games. I'm wondering if they'll pick up a game just versus UOL just because they've played them so many times. They just come out with a wacky draft. I think that
It's plausible.
I think RNG lose one to UOL and UOL lose one to PGG. I think it's going to be, but the order's not changing. The order's not changing.
Probably not. And again, it's also like if you look over just statistically over the history of a lot of sort of just international tournaments, like even teams are genuinely amazing. Very, very rarely do teams go undefeated in groups.
The
Very
closest
rarely.
we
It's
got
normally
was
5-1.
SKT Season 5, which is the most dominant team of all time, in my opinion, and they lost a single game in the finals. And they got close during some of those games, actually.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, even the best in the world still gives over points. I mean, there's always these thing of like eventually a reign must end. You just look at traditional sports, you look at the reign that Michael Jordan had, you look at the reign that Tiger Woods had. I'm only linking it to people I actually can remember off the top of my head of MVPs, but
Well, I mean,
I'm a golf kid, so
yeah. So well, I mean, our grandparents first we grew up.
Grandparents
with
were
it.
big
Oh!
golfers, yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
I've been to one Ryder Cup thing, didn't we? When it was in Wales
when it was
one
out in
time.
Wales, yeah.
Woo!
See, we are
Like,
actually
one
just
time.
budget
I think I remember.
we
It's quite
are
Good fun.
literally both budget Vedius because we are both
half
Welsh.
literally both half Welsh.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
only a quarter, so I'm like
Looking
so busted.
Yeah. Even teams which switch out members and have that kind of that mantle to bear, stuff like England went on the England rugby union team went on an 18-game winning streak to match.
Yeah, they did.
The All Blacks, right?
Yeah, they did.
It is not just been like whitewashed.
Unexpected, but they did it.
Yeah, well, I mean, back at that time, they had a really good.
They were
winning
very good.
formula, but
They were very
then,
good.
I think did Wales end up winning? Did they end up matching it?
It would be a Welsh thing to do. It would be a Welsh thing to do.
Yeah.
English did something. We
Hell
gotta
yeah.
do it too now.
There's bloody English people, of which I'm a part of. So unfortunately, I can't really have either side of that rivalry.
That doesn't change my opinion.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. So ultimately, we think one game could easily be given over anyway, but RNG are probably going to be number 1, and UOL will most likely be number 2, unless we're completely off on Pentanet, and in actuality, they're way better than we realize, which honestly, for at least myself, I could be wrong, and I'm very willing to be wrong about that team because I don't know anything about them. I'm just going on historical history, which is where a lot of people pull their Japanese opinion at the moment,
exactly.
which is
we're in the
fair.
same position for the other regions, which is why we'll mainly be doing this stuff for Group C.
Yes. Let's actually zoom on then, gentlemen, because I think we've confirmed everything for Group A and our thoughts, and we've given a nice little heartfelt for our VCS compatriots. We miss you guys. Group B, gentlemen, this is probably going to be the second most exciting group in our opinion, because obviously we have the best group. Group B, we have the Istanbul Wildcats. I do know their name goes a bit more, I think, but I don't know. I'll be honest, I haven't followed Turkey at all, so I do not know anything about this team. I'm not going to lie on the podcast because that's where people can clip it and ship it. Not a good idea. They beat 1907 Thibiachi Esports in the fight. Fenerbahce? Oh,
Yeah.
God.
I know you didn't say Fibonacci.
Fibonacci. They beat them in a 3-1. I haven't watched that series.
1-3 to
Do you guys know more about this team?
They have Holy Phoenix
Bits and
on them.
pieces.
There's been a long time player. Besides that, the other members on the team, because obviously again we've kind of been focusing on Group C. this isn't your, because I mean, from what I was talking about with because I was basically discussing DFM being a super team for the LJL and being the true super team with someone on Reddit, and they were saying, well, I mean, it's really hard to keep those teams together, and it was kind of in relation to Supermassive from last year from the TCL. Just gonna say like, yeah,
Very good team.
We lost everyone. They all went ways. We couldn't keep them together. Super teams like even your G2s, your IGs, or whatever will often just fall apart for monetary reasons, for kind of exhaustion reasons, for whatever. So Istanbul Wildcats are coming after one of these super teams. The question is, has the level of the region, for me, my question to them is, has that level of the region managed to sustain a good level of play when you don't have a super team? They do have good players on there. Again, like Holy Phoenix is a player that they were on Dark Passage in 2014. They ended up being on one. They've been to Worlds before. They have that they kind of experience on them, and that long tenured players in a difficult group though.
Yeah, I know.
It's simple. Wow, sorry, the Supermassive point just completely. I'll come back to it. You go, Initialize. You go.
No, that's fine. I mean, like Holy Phoenix has been one of the better AD carries at international events for a while. I mean, obviously he's had his own drama around him, which I think is probably worth leaving aside for now. But he's been.
I don't even know about it.
Stuff with
Can't comment.
Doge with some difficult accusations made.
Interesting. Okay.
But again, like it's also quite important in some ways. This is a full Turkish team, right? As we said, there's no GBM and stuff on here. There's no
Korean imports.
No cacao. All this kind of it's a full Turkish team, and that's kind of potentially quite interesting. And yes, there's some real talent on here, but it's just keep our eyes on that for sure.
Yeah, I mean that pushback that you got, Nymaera on Reddit, I'm like, Armut was not going to say after the performance he had. He was arguably the best player outside of Cacao. Cacao's having a year break, from my understanding. He's just having a year of rest because he's been doing just so much. And
it's something like in 2019, he promoted a team to the LCK and then got kicked from the roster. Then he went back to the Supermassive, and then obviously things didn't quite work out the way they wanted to do for the last Worlds either. Wait, did they end up getting through the groups? I'm trying to remember actually.
No, they lost to Unicorns of Love in the actual
but it was wasn't that a 5-game series though?
No, 0-3 to UOL.
Oh, lol.
That was...
Okay, in that case, I forgot that one then. Oh no,
it was a very forgettable series.
That was the OPL guys. Again, this is why I've been focusing on Group C, guys. There's just too many teams to prep for, which is why if you want,
I mean, there's Bolu who was still good and everything, and then the bot lane are actually now free agents. They're not there, so I don't really know what that guy's point on Reddit was. I'm just kind of coming to defend you. I don't know what this guy's point was, because one of the players wanted to go have a year of rest, from my understanding, and two of them are just free agents. And Bolu still exists in Army. Well, he's now going to MSI, so don't really know what that guy's point was, but good job to you, buddy. Good job to you, whoever you are, random person. I salute you. Gentlemen, a team I actually know rather well, and I imagine we all do, is Mad Lions, coming in from the LEC. Obviously, they had that just insane series versus Rogue. Insane playoff run. Mad Lions. I mean, I literally was doing a show where I was just covering LEC, so I mean, I'm familiar with these guys. But gentlemen, what are your thoughts on Mad Lions coming into this MSI and this group specifically?
They finally made it click. It took them a damn long time to split, but they came into playoffs really well prepped. I think that their coach Mac did a really good job of explaining why he thought that G2 didn't really swing with the meta well, in terms of like how do they move their jungle and support around, and then not being able to dive bot and whatever, and trying to particularly enabling top laners was a problem that G2 had.
Think how long Mac's been doing this for. He's been doing this since December 2017 with Spliced. Went through the rebranding, and he's finally got the team to properly
So he was on the team that lost to DFM that one time.
Yeah.
He was assistant coach for that, so you don't blame him for it.
He was assistant in the loss to the LJ. Yeah, sure, whatever.
I think that was Peter Dunn's fault that time, so it's whatever. But yeah, no, I mean, let's go. Sam, go for it.
I think it'll be interesting for these guys. Obviously, it's fun that Armut's in this group as well with everybody else, which is with Turkey in here as well. So that's a little bit of fun there. And obviously, I think Mad Lions did a really good job of kind of overcoming the odds to get to the international event, and they've definitely got some ways to play. You know, obviously Armut's ability to pull out random stuff like Wukong is certainly pretty terrifying.
It's
and
good, I
yeah,
think.
right. And then obviously people like Elioya has had a really great rookie
Yeah,
split.
especially replacing Shadow.
Yeah, and he's been very versatile, great early game player. Humanoid as well, I think, has had a fantastic season. Obviously, I think he was still a step behind people like Larson and Caps, but was still really good.
Yeah.
But I will also say I still think they were somewhat fortunate. I won't call it entirely lucky because I don't think that's fair. I think they played really well given the situations, but I do think that particularly versus Rogue, I still think on a general scale, I think Rogue are probably a slightly better team. Even if at the time Mad Lions managed to get a little bit of under Rogue skin and find some ways to punish them in the finals that got them the win on the day.
Awesome.
And potentially there are some ways that this team is punishable. Particularly, I think Kazi and Kaiser and Lane have been somewhat suspect.
But I think it's safe to say they're probably going to be the team to beat in this group, in my opinion. They are the number one pool team. The pool system, how it is, VCS was going to be in pool 2. So the idea is you can quite confidently be like, pool 1 team should make it out. Pool 2 teams should also be in the higher echelons. But outside of some of the pool 3, pool 4 teams, it could be a bit competitive depending on how it goes.
I think this is maybe the most competitive group. But just looking at the way that some, particularly with PSG's roster stuff coming up, which we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, I think that mostly, I mean, there is a good reason that the pool system exists, and that does give a decent benchmark of power to these teams.
Well, let's go on to our next team. It's actually going to be Pain Gaming, because that's the order in alphabetical order that I assume everything is in. So Pain Gaming, again, I'm not going to pretend. I'll be honest, I have not been doing a lot of my research for these other 2 groups, because I have my group that I care so wholeheartedly about. Pain Gaming, from having a quick overview of them, they beat Thrax? I'm going to go with that pronunciation. Probably wrong. In a 3-1 series. I have no idea. This is obviously the representative from CBLOL, the Brazilian representative. From having a look at it, Lucy is actually a familiar name to me, but everybody else...
Tinone's a very old players.
Tinone's, there we go.
No,
so
horror.
BRTT was on the
again.
team that beat CLG at Season 5 Worlds, so that was one of the famous upset players, but there's actually one of the most famous upset players of all time in Tinone's in the mid lane, who was on the Kaboom roster, that beat Alliance to knock them out of groups. This team has tenure. This team has, like, some real experience in their roster. Yeah, they're coming from CBLOL, which is typically not done very well internationally, and they are, as we said, in a hard group. But they have they have that tenure and experience, and actually the experience of upsetting teams from that underdog position when they have taken down, like your number 1 seeds are in NA in Europe and stuff like that. That I really think they could be a spanner in the works in Group B.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Initia1ise?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some fun stuff here, and I still think they're a relatively slow team. I still think that but the other thing to point out is, like, people like BRTT have been international superstars for personality and streaming and stuff as well. I mean, wasn't he on Cloud9 for a little bit as a streamer type thing, and he played for the academy team briefly, that kind of thing, for like a little bit back in like 2017 or something. Like, this guy is like and in fact he's in his 30s. He's 30 now, actually, as of this year. He's managed to get to the national tournament, and like, not that means like,
oh no, Sam,
he wasn't on
he wasn't on the Cloud9 Academy roster. I know who you're thinking of, but it's not BRTT.
It's not BRTT. Okay, no, sorry, it was somebody else who was quite famous though. But it's the same kind of deal like this. Apologies. Like, he's been to pretty much every All-Star event, it feels like. He's and I think it's quite important in some ways that this is a guy who is still really talented, still make it to international events, and kind of proving that
who you're thinking of, Sam.
That's who I was thinking of. Thank you. Who is still able to make it out to international tournaments and kind of help dispel a little bit. Particularly, I think it's particularly true in Korean and European settings where age can sometimes be a bit of a killer as to getting into the game, getting into the esports.
I'm going to
it's
take
fun.
us away from this conversation because it's something we've done before and we spent 30 minutes on almost.
fair
So
enough.
I'm not going to have us go down that one, though it is a common conversation and
more to talk
probably
about
worth a whole episode podcast at some point from us, either just talking about it and just talking around our thoughts around it. But yeah, I'm just going to take us away from there because we have got a bunch of other teams to talk about and round out group number B. And that's actually going to be PSG Talon with an asterisk. Because this is not the full roster that went, and there has been a... Oh, God, one of the players is in hospital, if I'm remembering everything off the top of my head, because
so I think he has been managed to
happened.
fly. Yeah, so Maple was in hospital on either the day before or 2 days before they were due to fly out. I believe that he has been able to fly with the roster, but Maple obviously went over to the LPL for the split and was on LNG, I think it was, and then came back to the PCS after that season, has come back and done very well. But yes, I think they have managed to carry over. Same can't be said for the All-Star AD carry Unified, though.
Yeah.
So what's happened with them?
So Unified, I believe they weren't able to get a visa to head out. I'm trying to remember exactly.
I think their passport had expired, and
no, that was their coach. That was
that's right. The coach who can't make it because the passport's expired and then the things were closed. I'd have to do if you want to quickly Google that. Point of clarity as well. My point around drama with Holy Phoenix was wrong. That was another player who is not involved. So take that back. That's really important to clarify.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Because there isn't actually any drama there. It was somebody else who was another superstar AD carry.
So it was a health issue for Unified as well. Actually, it wasn't. So it was their coach which had the expiring visa, and then it is Unified who has had a medical condition which has stopped them from it's kind of been getting worse over the splits. They don't think it's safe for them to travel, so they're just gonna make sure they got the medical attention they need. However, Unified has for this PSG Talon roster for the last 2 years. Actually, remember he couldn't travel to last Worlds. I think that one was because of visas, which is why we kind of got our wires crossed.
Probably, yeah.
Unified has been the core of this roster. Unified and Kaiwing are fucking cracked. They are crazy. They are the best bot lane
good
in the PCS, and to not have them is a big blow to this roster, which is kind of where I'm now just going like, upsets. Just saying.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's a fair place, right? Because this should have been the team that were probably going to be a good lock with Mad Lions to have some competitive games, and then probably be the top 2 teams. And now there's
they might still be, in fairness.
They might be.
Kaiwing, River, Maple are all like ridiculously good on their game. You know, we all love River as well. He's ex V3, he's ex Baby. You know, we know this guy from the LJL. He was a pretty big superstar there. He's been pretty good.
Hanabi
over
top
for
lane
the
too.
PCS.
Remember back? He was because Hanabi was on the Flash Wars roster that
he was.
Boogie was on.
So was Maple.
So and Hanabi was like the really awesome Yasuo top of that tournament who ended up having that really good first round robin, and then they kind of fell apart in the second part, and then they didn't manage to progress past that point. So yeah, no, this roster has some real talent on it. Again, verging towards one of those super teams too, and it's the reason why PSG Talon has been dominant for the last couple of years of play.
So it means with this team not in full motion, we'll have to wait and see. Gentlemen, I mean, it's time to now start giving your vague predictions. Obviously, we'll probably over on the LJLOU Twitter actually give our full proper predictions on how we're predicting each of these groups to go out and everything. I'm going to see if Munchables is going to be doing his Photoshop document that he did last time for Worlds. I'm going to definitely give him a quick DM and be like, so buddy, you're gonna make that free stuff again for me, and then I'm just gonna distribute it. I'll just distribute it out to people.
Distribute it.
Yeah. Oh, I've got this cool stuff. Don't worry about it.
Lexi's our PSD dealer.
Distributor.
Distributor of Photoshop documents.
Yes. Until we get a graphics designer, which actually, if you are interested in doing that, applications close in 2 days, ladies and gentlemen. 2 days. We will do a full thing on that as well with this podcast as well. But yes, closing to join the LJL crew as a graphic designer will be closing very soon for all our other roles as well. Right. Predictions. Yes, that's what we were doing here. So for me, I've got Mad then probably PSG, and then shrugging my shoulders because I don't know and I don't want to insult people I don't know very well.
I think my call is probably Mad, then Talon, then Wildcats, then Pain. But I could also see a world where particularly the Wildcats have a world to go into second because of where their strengths lie. I think Holy Phoenix is a really good AD carry, like he has been for years. And
Couldn't
like,
quite hear that,
especially just saying that, like, I think that Holy Phoenix is a really cracked AD carry, basically.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
actually going into people like Talon and realizing that, oh crap, we've got a sub AD carry who was on, he was on like Beyond Gaming. I think his name's Doggo's their kind of loaned AD carry. He was, he was pretty good for Beyond Gaming and stuff, but it's not unified, right? It's not the synergy with Kaiwing. And yes, Kaiwing is still really good, but if you're suddenly your strength is now, or one of your strengths is no longer one of your strengths, then maybe that's punishable. And I also think the Mad actually could, I think they're less likely to crumble like they did last time. But there is still a world where, there are weaknesses in this squad, and maybe for me, this is the group with the most potential for upset.
Nymaera?
I mean, it would be very easy to just say, just go in the pool order, so the pool one team first and then going down it. I do worry about Mad again having rookie players on the international stage. That has been something which plagued V3 last year. It played Mad Lions last year. They didn't make it out of Blends, I think PSG not having that
people's favorite.
Yeah, the fact that PSG haven't just lost their starting AD carry, but losing like the core of their team, which again, or at least in the I haven't really caught up with them in 2021, but last year Unified was so good. They still have Kaiwing, they still have River, they still have Maple, they still have Hanabi. They're still a really, really good team. In fact, PSG probably now find themselves in a position that DFM are in with Kazu, actually. In terms of having,
In a way.
yeah, except they haven't had the chance to, practice with Doggo for as long as Unified, and that's going to be a problem. So I think it will be pool order. I do think that the TCL has been a strong region. The question is again whether one of these teams, which hasn't been a quote unquote super team, can match the performances of someone like Supermassive. I think it's probably going to be pool order. I'll leave it at that.
I mean, there is always
that. Going to come in.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that chance that Pain Gaming cause a huge upset, and because they've been playing with this roster and having a lot of success over in their region, they come out of nowhere and they absolutely destroy. Like, you just don't know. And I mean, this is going to be the kind of narrative stuff that we will be peddling in Group C. So expect the peddling to begin, ladies and gentlemen, because we're on to Group C, and this is our group, and it's taken us a while to get here. But sometimes you have to do all the background due diligence before you can actually get to the place that you want to be at. And Group C. So starting us off in alphabetical order. It's Cloud9, gentlemen. Now, they had a banger of a series. Now, it was a fun series. I have to clarify this, because every time I come out with that, everyone looks at me like I've grown an extra fucking head. It was a fun series to watch. And I was also half dying at the time. So forgive me. I was half dying. I had missed LJL finals, but this helped revive me back to life, because watching the stupid shit in this best of 5... Oh, it was great. They had that crazy series versus Team Liquid, where they had a sub.
Santorin, yeah.
Oh yeah. Trust me, I'm of the opinion that with that game going like that, and with C9 having to pull out some of their more crazier and Perks having to put hard carry mode on, I'm a little bit more hopeful. I'm only a little, tiny, incy bit. Yeah. But hey, that's what I need to cling on to, gentlemen. What's your thoughts on C9?
I think there are some really cracked players on that squad. Perks is still a really good.
Cracked, not
Blabber.
Cracked, just clarify.
Cracked, yes.
Yes.
With a CK.
Volume a bit
with
lower.
As you were saying.
Like Blabber as well, I think is still really, really strong. I think the one thing that finals did show is that Cloud9 are quite versatile when it comes to playstyles and stuff. Like Perks is able to switch from the likes of Seraphine all the way over to Silas and look pretty good on all of those options. There was some over eagerness at certain points, which cost them earlier on in that series. So yes, I think there's a world where potentially you can punish them, but I think it would be unwise to underestimate this squad, who I think definitely have a strength and breadth when it comes to play style, which I think most teams don't have to the same extent.
Nymaera, anything to add?
I think that there are two caveats to Cloud9 because they have some really good players, very instinctive skirmishers and team fighters. Their drafts have a lot of errors and they leave a lot of openings for sweeping advantages within drafts. I think that they've done pick order in a very strange way. They've not prioritized some very heavily contested champions at some points. And I feel like, one more bad... I think they've succeeded in spite of bad drafts, which is incredible to say, because again, their team fight in their early game is so relentless in a lot of ways. But I think that they've also ended up having some times that are sat there and was like, well, we can't do anything because we've drafted a Callista into too many hyper tanks and we can't really do stuff. They almost stymied that with the Seraphine, but it was, again, I was kind of sat there with a couple of drafts going like, okay, all right, maybe this is not...
I know that was specific. The specific game being like that game one of the finals versus Liquid specifically with Seraphine Callista, where I know like Nymaera had a serious issue with the draft. I know it was interesting because obviously like we were watching Papa Smithy cast it and he quite liked it and thought they'd done really well with the early game.
But they missed out on the drafting process.
The
G4 stream was like
that's the one.
5 minutes behind for whatever reason. They switched over and we had to watch Olivier and Brian Kibler and who was the other? No, I can do this. Broxer.
Yeah.
Talk random shit. Obviously, I'll know Kibler off the top of my head
there
because
was some big
Kibler.
I think like the feed kicked in a bit late for them. Anyway, so I think that DFM. I mean, maybe that game's not the best example.
But we want to see more of that stuff, by the way. I want to say more of that.
Good.
Absolutely,
Great
question.
question.
And getting
because that gives
Papadoa as a cast, absolute dream for me. I love that.
Oh,
but yeah, I think that C9 have occasionally not ordered their draft well. I think it has left some openings where if I were the enemy coach, I'd be like, oh, this feels like a bit of a freebie in terms of the draft. They have played beyond that. And then the other question is, of course, what kind of form is Fudge going to turn up in first international tournament? We know that he's improved throughout this year. They had a very good finals, in fact. But international is another step again, and you're going to be up against some of the best top laners in the world at this tournament. I mean, you got Khan in this group. Ebby is no slouch, and you've also got Bugax from Infinity, who's also pretty damn good.
Scary as crap,
I remember this guy.
I actually wonder if C9 are in an awkward position where they might even have, if Fudge comes in on weak form, the worst top laner in the group, which could be.
Oh, I think Fudge is. Oh no, I don't.
I think if he comes in on good form, I don't think it'll matter. But
no, I think it'll be pretty net neutral. I think it'll be Khan and then 3 other top laners who are about even. But there is also a very real world that Ebby is actually the second best top laner.
Yeah,
there is.
Plus I'll also say that for all that Fudge has sometimes had wave management issues. I also think that he's come a long way from that lock-in tournament where he and Blabber were just on the wrong page, and that kind of meant that the waves weren't at the right places and that kind of deal, which is such a big deal in top lane.
Is this Blabber's first international tournament? Because he wasn't at Worlds last year.
I don't know.
This will be his first international tournament as a starter.
Yeah. I don't think Blabber has actually
legit.
ever played on stage before at an international event.
Yeah, he just shadowed Sven Skaren.
So and again, we know that rookies at Worlds. We know that. Okay. Well, do you mind looking at Wikipedia for that? Because I can't quite remember if he was a starter on.
He wasn't a starter, but he was still playing games. He was just not. He was just.
Right. Subbing in and out.
It was with Sven Skaren. He was switching in and out.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So not quite that. But anyway, particularly with Fudge, we know that being a rookie on the international stage can hurt, and there are some very experienced players in this group. So I think that C9 should be coming in looking hot. I think that they're really good at skirmishing. I think Perks on the international stage is fucking incredible. So is Sven. And Vulcan, again, has been a very strong support this split. I think that there are some key players which, if they're on form, will be very hard to upturn.
So hard. The C9 is definitely one of those teams where there's no surprise that most people have got them pegged to be number 2 coming out.
Yeah. And again, like, it's one of those things where, like, actually, I think, it's all well and good talking about things like top lane potentially being an interesting point to keep your eyes on in this group. And rightly so. I'll also say, like, I think it tends to be top plus jungle that makes a lot of things.
I think the top side of the map if you viewed, like, top side and then duo lane, that's probably the way to view it for me in this group.
Yeah. In some ways, because, like, because actually some of these top players maybe in 1v1s would take massive advantage. I think Khan, for example, has been historically quite good at that, even if he's been left more to weak side tank play this year. I know Temporal, who's a sort of who's been an analyst friend of ours and coach friend of ours for a while, thinks that Khan has probably been one of the weaker members of Damwon this year. But even so, like actually say
gentlemen, let's move over to Damwon. Let's actually do this, because it makes more sense if we're going to start talking about Khan and everyone that we actually move over. So Damwon, they had a pretty interesting split from what I've seen. It was good, but everyone that I've talked to says this is still a step down from the Damwon that we saw last year. Now, as somebody that's only paid a little bit of attention to LCK this split, I've been far more LEC, LCS, LJL this year. This split rather. What do people mean by that? I want to go over to Nymaera first for this one, if that's okay.
First off, you don't have Nuguri, who is the best individual laning top player in the world. Between this season and last season. In fact, this split, he's still, even Xiaohu from RNG, who is one of the best statistical top laners because his team plays around him, is just saying like, oh yeah, I was outplayed. I was the worst top laner in the day on the finals, to Nuguri. And Damwon do not have that player right now. They have Khan. Khan is good. It feels like, if I were to describe Damwon, they are like the ultimate epitome of playing by the book, right? Particularly with Canyon, right? He will just punish every opening given the checklist. He just like has this like 100-point checklist in his head. He'll instantly just go through and be like, this is the perfect move and I can do it because this is the game state. It's kind of like, this is the new iteration of the Season 4 Korean style where like you just know with the information that you have that you can take certain fights, that you can make certain plays and get certain advantages. And I feel like Khan has not been the lane-dominant, omni-pressure top player that Nuguri was. He has been good. He's been a great tank player. He has not been a liability, but compared to the rest of the team, he's not been Showmaker or Canyon, who are probably the two best players in the world right now.
I was getting real Magnus Carlsen vibes when you were like, he just has a checklist. He knows 100 moves, and I will do the best thing. And I'm like, that sounds like the chess prodigy.
They are the grandmasters ever. They are the grandmasters of chess of League right now. That's the way they play. They play a chess game. They know their information. They play well around it. There was a scary moment in the finals against Gen.G where they got to late game, and again, they kind of drafted to the point where we thought, oh shit, they've been locked out here. And they fought incredibly well in mid and late game. I actually think each of these teams in this group have been really good at late game team fighting. So it's really great to see these regional variances across this group, and saying, all right, okay, DFM, they've never lost like with a lead at 15. They have been really good if they've been let into a game. Can they evenly team fight with some of these other teams who have done exactly the same?
Yeah, I think I'll also add in that actually, for all that we're saying, oh, damn, well, maybe not as ridiculous as last year, they're still probably the best team in the world, guys. Like, while Khan maybe isn't quite as synergized with his team, I'll also say I think Ghost has really stepped up this year. I think he's actually become a significantly better AD carry, largely speaking. He has been playing a little less towards weak side. Yeah, Khan is a ridiculously good side. Like, look, check those finals out. It was actually stupid. He ruined the game for the other team, for Gen.G. It was silly. And Khan is still good, and you can still play things like Jason Camille and be pretty happy with it. And if you focus to him, he's still the Khan of old if you want to give him resources. But I'll also say that. But I'll also say, he can actually play weak side pretty well now. And he's not a liability up there. I just don't think he's necessarily the world ender that Nuguri has been. Even say when FPX was up against RNG, like Nuguri was still looking good on things like Aurelia and desperately trying to carry versus Xiaohu. But it'll be interesting to watch. And I will also be curious to see what Damwon and Canyon in particular decide to do in terms of where are you prioritizing your pressure for ganks and stuff. Because like obviously say partly I was bringing this up is that yes, maybe Fudge isn't as good a laner. In some ways, I also think he's very, very good at setting up and synergizing with Blabber these days. Like, I think one of the strengths that Fludge has shown is the fact that he and Blab actually have got very good synergy right now. And they punish that very heavily, say, versus Alfari in the finals for Liquid. So, like, I will be curious to see. I still think Damwon are going to come out heads and shoulders ahead in this group. But I wonder what happens when some of these sort of jungle pathing preferences start matching up. Because people like Steel and Blabber and Canyon have all got particular ways of playing and particular members they tend to go to. And that could lead to some interesting early games in particular.
Well, it also must be said that Keikoma, the best coach that has ever lived in the history of League, the MVP coach of all time, that even has a award, and they couldn't even give him a skin, so they gave him a ward skin because they're like, we need to give you something, dude. Like this is fucked up what you're doing.
He wanted a Teemo skin, but they gave him a Teemo ward skin.
That's fucked.
It's better than any other coach has ever had. So.
Oh, absolutely. He is their head coach at the moment, and then the secondary assistant coach, or just coach, as I think their thing is. Yeah, they just roll coach. Pumandu. He did a short stint in the LJL for Sengoku Gaming when they didn't make it to playoffs. When they didn't make it to MSI, which was an upset, or World.
And was on season 3 SKT.
Yeah, and he's a world champion.
Yeah. This is like a guy that has done a stint in the LJL and then was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna come back, coach Damwon Kia, because why not? And it's like, oh yes, so they're gonna be going to him, going, so sir, what do we do against DFM? And they're just like, right, I've got everything I need to know about them. Which we'll go into more detail about DFM when we start doing our comparisons between these teams. But yeah, we should be scared of Damwon, right? Like, there's no reason to think any other way.
Everyone should be.
I assume so. Great best of 5. Well, not really great best of 5. It's just a good finals to watch if anyone has the chance. I've watched the finals. Like, I'm not a complete moron, but it was just kind of a slap in the pants. So I was like, oh, okay. The final one, and this is actually a great series. If you haven't watched it, go and watch this, because we almost got Boogie, then we didn't get Boogie, but then we got maybe the best bot lane that Latin America has ever seen coming out. So that's fucking terrifying.
Yes.
We have got Infinity, or Gillette Infinity Esports, or however you want to do it. I don't mind. I'll happily shout out a sponsor for a team. They beat Furious Gaming in a wild reverse sweep. It's kind of insane. You can definitely see some of the players from Furious starting to tilt out a little bit. It was just great to watch. Just so much happened. So much stuff happened. Go watch it. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts currently on Infinity Esports, if you have any?
It's probably the team I know least about, and you probably know significantly more in some ways, Lexi. But at least from what I've been saying, like, again, I was having this chat. I know you guys are having it as well. That, like, Infinity have got a ridiculously good bot lane, and that potentially sets them in good step versus somebody like DFM. But on the other side, they're also really slow. They are by far the slowest team in this group. Like, Cloud9 play fast. If they get an advantage, they win fast. Damwon Kia, again, you get to mid game and they start fighting you, and the game's just over. DFM as well, you don't roll them early.
Well,
they hit mid game skirmishes and they win.
Group on average to game time.
Yeah,
they're 4 minutes faster than Infinity. But yeah, so Infinity, like, I'd echo Sam's point on that. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. I know I cut in.
Keep going, Sam, then.
That's pretty much mostly what I wanted to say. Is like, yes, it's interesting to see where the strengths are, because actually their bot lane, like, again, is nuts good. And that, again, someone like Kazu, who is a coach, ex-pro. Yes, he's not bad mechanically, but he's hardly a challenger wonder boy like Arya is these days. And versus Infinity, who who is their bot laner these days? It's White Lotus, isn't it? It's White
Lotus, Ackerman.
So I was trying to remember
it's an insane stacked bot lane.
Like,
for them.
Yeah, exactly. And we're just like, oh boy, these guys are good. But then I'm also a bit worried, honestly, for Cody in the mid lane, who I think is probably the weakest mid laner in this group in my mind, considering I think Arya is really, really talented and is Perks and Showmaker. Yeah. That sounds potentially really dangerous.
Oh, we will be biased, but yeah, absolutely. Cody just seems a step below. Like, he just doesn't have the kind of crazy carry performance that Arya has showcased on both DFM and his previous team of CGA. Obviously, we all know Perks. We all know Showmaker. It's fucking Showmaker. So, yeah, Cody, bless you, buddy. You've got 2 Korean superstars, one that's already established himself, one that's hoping to establish themselves, and then you've got maybe the best player of all time from Europe. So, good luck, buddy.
Fox is crazy. Best Western player ever at this point. Definitely the most prestigious one. Like, maybe you could say that Caps had higher heights or whatever, but Perks has had some ridiculous moments. But yeah, so I guess my thoughts on Infinity would be, I think their bot lane is, of course, where their map revolves around. White Lotus and Ackerman, they get late game scaling carries, they get the resources, and they carry the shit out of the game. In solo queue, I've been seeing them pick up stuff like Cog Lulu as well, so there is a chance that we start seeing some of that
They'll
on,
do
on,
the
on the stage.
stupid hyper carry stuff, yeah.
Well, this is the problem. I'm kind of looking at them like, ah ha ha, you Kazu, oh no. I think there are some points to talk about with that, but yes, I think that so Bugax is another player to kind of dive into because this guy was on the 2019 Initia1ise roster that ended up beating DFM, knocking them out of 2019 Worlds. We have the LLA LJL rivalry again. We've had it for a couple of years now, and it's come back again.
Yeah, and I mean, this is like to really emphasize like how scared we should be of White Lotus specifically. When you look at the individual player of the game standings, White Lotus said it 5 times. Boogie is still having insane performances over there. He only got it twice nods.
Wow.
And his mid laner for Furious Gaming, who was arguably the best mid laner, by the way, in the region of top loop. Sadly, they weren't able to overcome Infinity. Like Furious Gaming looked to be the team to do it. They were the number 1 seed going in. They have the stage ladder for playoffs, and Infinity beat All Knights comfortably, may I add. And then had an insane series where Furious Gaming looked to take it 3-0, and then they found the reverse sweep. Just go watch. Just go watch it, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a good series. You get to see the pros that was Furious and the pros of Infinity. You get to it's so much. Just go watch it. It's a really good series. Though, gentlemen, we've talked about 3 other teams, and we've mentioned this other detonate.
Who are these guys?
Jump number 1 from Japan. Japan still have a league. What? Aren't they just like Oceania at this point? Like, what? This guy called Ebby. What?
Ooh.
This guy called Steel. What? There's this Aria kid. He's like,
I've heard of them.
Never heard of him. And then this guy called Udapon. I've heard of Udapon. That's a guy we've all heard of. And then Kazu. What's going? Right. That's okay. I'll stop memeing aside. Right, gentlemen, we need to actually make a case for DFM here because this might be the part that actually people care about, click to, and everything else. What is the reason that Donation Focus Me have a chance of doing well? What do we expect to actually happen, and what would we like to have happen? Because I think it's also important to clarify those 2 different things. Because we have what we would like and then what we actually feel like will happen. Obviously, this is kind of a team. Who wants to give the footnote for DFM? Who wants to do it?
All right, so for new people to the region who are listening in just because they want to find out about MSI and somebody else's take on it, well, welcome for one. 2, DFM are our team. We cover the LJL. Detonation Focus Me are the LJL representatives. You may have heard them before, but you won't know them like this because finally, for the first time, this organization has made some serious roster shuffles for the first time in a long time. Namely, Seros, one of the franchise players, been with the squad since 2012. Single most tenured player alongside Utapon behind Faker at a single organization. They've been at DFM that long. Seros is now the sub. He has been replaced by Aria, who is a Korean wonder kid, who is really, really good. Honestly, he's just been an MVP candidate since he turned up in the LJL in 2019. He was under the name Luna at the time and was really damn good. Like, I cannot begin to tell you how good this guy was. He was hard carrying his team when the rest of his team was a number of expletives about dog crap at points. Like, he's had junglers who were just not very good at the game. Trying to play with him. He would just hard carry his squads. He was basically pulled out of Korean Challenger for being 1k plus elo. Plays, it seems, everything. And now on DFM, this change has come through. But it's a bit of a weird situation because there are some residency restrictions. So that sort of term we're looking for that are kind of holding the team back until summer. In summer, their jungler, Steel, who's been with DFM again for a very long time, becomes a resident. He's a Korean import, but so, of course, is Aria, and so, of course, is Gang, their nominal starting support. Steel gets residency, which means Gang gets to come back into the roster. That will be when the Exodia is complete, and pretty much the point is at that point, guys, this roster for DFM is the single best roster the LJL could put together, period. Like, it's that good. Every player is top 1, top 2 in the role, probably. At least in contention, and they've got massive synergy together, huge champion pool, and they've basically already won spring with a coach in for their support. Their coach is their support player.
The 2v1 that continues going.
Exactly, and Kazu is he's an ex-pro player, so he's not like he's just had no experience, and he was a decent pro player. Like he's genuinely done pretty well. He's been on DFM before. He's played with Utapon before, and he's still got decent solo queue records. He's not, I mean, he's no amazing player anymore really, but he's very good on his engaged supports, and he's basically we were talking to a guy called Maple Street who people may know as ex-LCS player, was on Renegades and a few other things, Odd One's brother, all that kind of jazz. He was also, for a while, the coach of Sengoku Gaming in the LJL and still follows the scene and used to coach Kazu. And he was basically saying this is a guy who will take every 5-man engage, whether or not anybody's there to follow up. Because actually, if I hit 5 people with an ability, that's what I was supposed to do, right, coach?
You could just walk out like the work ticket at that point.
It's done. My work here is done. And that's Kazu. And it makes for an interesting situation where actually 4 of the players here right now are extraordinarily talented and the intending starters. The support is not, and he will be replaced come summer. He'll go back to the coaching role. Even so, DFM still won spring. They still look really good, and Kazu has been very hit or miss. Some of it's been amazing, some of it is not. But it leaves us with a very odd space of a lot of strength for DFM, but a very notable weakness.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, we can
that
move
is
on now.
the
Great.
So that's the footnote of DFM, gentlemen. Now we need to now actually start explaining where we feel. I think that was a brilliant sum up, by the way, Initialize. I kind of gave that to you off the top of your head.
I've done it so many times. I did it for the document we've done for some other casters who are looking into DFM. I've done it on Reddit. I've done it now here as well. This is like my 4th time. It's pretty well rehearsed at this point.
I mean, it's good because we might have to keep doing it for a while longer as well. Gentlemen, let's not beat around the bush here. If you have no idea about DFM, and you looked at this just going, okay, well, there's Damwon Kia, there's Cloud9, and then there's 2 other teams. I think that's how a lot of people are going to look at this, by the way. Unless you're from the North American audience, then you might be also following the Latin America, which is completely fair. But if external Europeans, Korean, Asia isn't going to know that, they're going to just see 2 other teams. One of these is Infinity. That's a new team. One of them's going to see, and then you're going to see the other one's Detonation Focus Me. Everyone knows DFM, but they don't know this DFM. And I think that's a big part of that footnote that Sam just gave us is this is not DFM anymore. This is not the DFM that your mum and dads grew up with. This is not the same DFM where Cyros is going to play Karma mid and it's just going to be like, well, he's going to play Heimerdinger now. And everyone's going to go, way, I love this Japanese guy. No, this is Arya. He will play anything and everything under the sun.
Yeah. A couple of things to back that up, by the way. Arya was the only player in the LJL to not play any champion more than 3 times. He has the largest champion pool. I think he's like maxed. I think he's like it matched the most champion
we did
picks.
This
or maybe
last season, didn't we? It was
he
something
had
like 50 something plus champions he's played in his career or something crazy like that in the mid lane.
But in this split, he didn't play any champion more than 3 times.
And that's solo queue.
And that's also compared to people like who didn't make playoffs and therefore played less games as well, by the way. And he has 5 champions out of those which have over a 500 DPM, and he did that without playing his 2 most successful champions of all time in Silas and LeBlanc. So he's kind of changed the way he plays, still doing incredible work on a huge breadth of champions. So doing good.
But obviously, it comes back to that thing of I don't like being the bad guy, but there is Damwon Kia and there is Cloud9. And most people are going to look at this and go, well, that should be an easy 1st and 2nd. Infinity and DFM, let's flip a coin and see which one comes out for their 3rd place spot. We need to now explain why we actually think DFM could at least, 1, contest Infinity and maybe overcome Infinity Esports. But then maybe try and find a win over C9, or the more difficult one of Damwon Kia. And the reason I say that is because we've all talked before about this, and we all think Damwon Kia is going to be almost an immovable object against most teams in the tournament. So me saying it here about the group is not crazy. Now, we've already mentioned before, gentlemen, well, it's double round robin, it's best of 1. Anything could happen. What are your current opinions on what's going to be happening? Initialize first.
All right, so reality check.
Let's do reality first.
I think in my head, reality check is it'll be down one first fairly clearly. I think Cloud9 are probably a pretty clear second because I actually think they are quite a good team.
Yeah.
Then I think probably DFM, who I think have a better stylistic matchup into Infinity than the other way around, and then Infinity. That said, there is a world where Kazu just gets slaughtered and it all falls apart. That's reality.
There's reality, and I want Nymaera your reality for a realistic. Like, if you put your analytics hat on and you're only looking at this and you want to just predict the winning teams and everything.
So the reality.
Take your heart out of this.
So if Sam did kind of like the pessimist reality, and that's that point's been made now. Yes, the bot lane is absolutely something that could get trash and not be fit for the international stage because Kazu's not good enough in lane. Is two decisive awful moments and then doesn't get follow-ups and stuff like that. The reality of the top side of the map though is that actually these are the best laning solo laners we have ever sent from team ever from the LJL. Arya and Ebby. Well, Ebby has been sent before, but Arya is fresh to the scene. And I think that particularly against teams like Infinity or even Perks, who has been a tad over aggressive at times in this last split and got caught out of position or whatever. I think there are ways actually that the top side of the map could go favored against any of these teams for DFM. So that's the reality check for me in terms of like the whole bot lane is definitely a concern, and that's likely going to be the straw which break. Well, no, it's not even going to be a straw. This is the boulder which smashes the camel's back. But the top side of the map in terms of the reality check is just for those of you who don't know this team so well. These are the best laning solo laners we've ever sent, so there are good things to be expected at least.
Absolutely, and to really amplify that up, because let's hype DFM up a little bit, because we're going to start going to Magical Christmas Land. Because as it was obviously clear, I obviously already thought Damwon in Cloud9, and then it was going to be a flip of a coin. Sure. That was my more realistic what most people are going to look at it as, and also what is probably going to happen. Now let's actually go a little bit into Magical Christmas Land and actually start talking a bit of hypotheticals. Because this is where DFM actually start to look a lot better when you frame it in a slightly different way that obviously favors them. But in theory, this could also favor the other team. So it's not just a one-way, a one-sided affair. DFM, if you go and watch that video that we were already talking about from Travis Gafford Industries Run It, Tim talks a lot about DFM in his video. He talks about the stats a lot. That he's like, well, Utapon, if you take out his center stuff, he isn't the highest CPM, but basically CSP per minute, but he basically has the second highest. Like, this man will farm and use his gold more effectively than almost anybody else in the tournament outside of
Kazu's support.
That's with Kazu, yeah, that's with Kazu as well. There's only one player that beats him, and I think
is it like Sven or possibly Gala?
I can't remember. It was someone from another region. I honestly can't remember off the top of my head. But basically, he also comes out and goes, Arya is definitely a legit person you should be paying attention to because his damage numbers are insane. His champion pool is wild. And yes, there is always going to be this caveat that we have got to deal with Kazu. We are going to have to deal with Kazu. But Kazu started coming back online in finals, gentlemen. Oh, yeah. You remember that?
Yeah, I have to say, actually, Kazu is up there for my MVP for finals. He had some really, really good engages.
Look, again, for all that we're saying that Kazu is a coach and he's not really a pro anymore, like, the guy still has a really good eye for engages. Like, he can find them. Like, that's what we're saying. Like, he goes to 5-man play. Sometimes those 5-man plays are absolutely superb. It was Gala. Okay, cool. Yeah, that would have been my wonder. Who's been
CS
really
share
good.
Post 15 minutes and also CS per minute as the axes, and Gala and Utapon are Gala, Utapon, and then Unified, who's obviously no longer at the event with the top ones.
Sadly.
Yeah, and that's largely with DFM playing with a bit of an interesting person. Like, obviously Kazu is great when he's going for the big plays. Like, he is a big playmaker. That's what, if he can go for them, things like set Alistair Rel, his bread and butter, he can do it. It's the micro things like, should you have stepped there in lane? Possibly not. Or I'm going to play. Yeah, we're still half screen away. You needed to wait for everybody else to be there, and that kind of sometimes that situational awareness can punish him. But the point being, like, this guy is still a very, very good playmaker, and on certain champions, it doesn't necessarily matter if you mess up 1 in 4 if those other 3 are, absolutely fantastic.
And then let's take it over because we have to talk about the jungle. because Steel is a very actually special kind of player. I was actually a little bit down on Steel before coming into MSI, but then I actually went away and I was like, okay, let's just think about what does Steel actually offer. This man is he's making calls in both Japanese and Korean at the same fucking time. If you want to know what the brain is of this current roster of DFM, it doesn't exist without Steel. You cannot actually take it. Like, if you take Steel out, so much of the heart that is Utapon, that is Ebi, that is Arya, that is Kazu, and when Gang comes in, it will be Gang. The idea of how this team plays is Steel. You can just go and watch TSM, I mean, DFM offline, I think it's called. It's something along those lines. Go onto the DFM YouTube channel. They have their own kind of TSM Legends kind of thing. It's very interesting to get some behind the scenes stuff. Yeah, it's not great. They haven't got English subtitles, but you can get ideas. And I'm sure if you have questions, our lovely people in our Discord server will be more than happy to explain what they're saying in those things. But some of the points that's been made, he does calls in different ways. He is their primary engager. He knows how the map is going. He is constantly shouting at people going, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And you're just like, wow, like he's on it like a car bonnet. That is definitely going to be something that is going to be very important coming into experience, because Solid Snake, he was able to beat Boogie, right?
Yeah.
But Boogie's a very different animal that even Steel was able to overcome at points. Yes, he didn't do it in the finals, but I would argue Steel's whole team wasn't quite ready to deal with V3 in those finals.
Steel in the finals did really well versus V3.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think the thing about Steel is that, and again, actually, DFM with prep time, particularly Steel with prep time, as Sam's been saying a lot of this,
Steel, yeah,
has been able to formulate so many damn plans against enemy junglers. The question is that going to work in the first round robin, or is that going to have to wait until day 2? Because if DFM don't come in hot, like, game's over. Game's over, man.
Yeah.
The first game is versus Infinity, and Steel's got to come in hot. So we're gonna have to wait on like all of that fantastic prep and see how well they do.
And I think as well, like, Steel has largely been relatively good at adapting to a meta. He's less the kind of jungler who will force teams to adapt to him sometimes, where he is relatively adaptable. And to an extent, that has hurt DFM before. It's like, we have to play through Ebi last year, was particularly in the summer, right?
It was.
Like, okay,
it was just
we'll run
that.
Renekton in Italy, we'll get early leads up in the Renekton in Italy, but then for whatever reason, Ebi's just inting it in early skirmishes, and it's like, damn. Like, and that was part of the problem, right? Like, sometimes, like, it's not necessarily a player performing badly or a player not having the mechanical chops in early games on certain champions. It's like the play style of a team isn't working, and that's more of a team thing. And especially for jungle, where your team's playstyle can often be determined by what does your jungler get to do early on, and what does your team set up your jungler to do early on with, support and mid support roaming and lane pressure and all the rest of it. Like, that's a lot of early game planning, honestly, is what is your jungler looking to do in the first clear, for first and second clears particularly, right? And how are you
Steel
set up
just,
to enable
yeah.
that, right? But particularly up to first Rift Herald, basically, is the deal, right? Like, that's a whole scrim culture. It's like, play till 8 minutes, play till first Rift Herald.
Well, I think,
that work what's going on with that. And I think
the thing
Steel
is
is someone who's
Sorry,
has largely been quite good at, I think, particularly after a bit of a learning curve last summer, at playing a few different styles. Now, he does play Hecarim, but he also plays Nidalee. But, it's a guy who has in the past been a pretty good Lee Sin and Jin Zhao player and a good Elise player. And he can play Udyr, and actually we've got to farm things up. And that versatility is pretty good. Even if I think sometimes he's beaten out in raw stats by people like Muujin and Boogie, like, I still think he's very able to compete. And I think he's quite versatile and quite smart about the game, which I think is quite good.
Yeah, I mean, this was just something we saw when we were looking over for finals prep. By the way, go watch our finals if you're interested in learning a lot about DFM. We have Maple and Joshi both there as analysts, along with Counterfeit, who helped us in a lot of spots. Really kind of analyzing and explaining some of these factors of the team and why DFM are winning in these spots. And just go watch it. It's a bunch of information from people that are sometimes smarter than us, not always, because we are very smart individuals. But we learned about stuff like this when we were prepping for Steel, and Steel was like, he has just this versatile. The first 4 minutes, Steel could be anywhere in his own jungle, or, which was important, the enemy jungle as well, because he is just like everywhere in the first 4 minutes.
And I think in a series, Steel is really good at adapting. The question is, can you do it in the best of one? I think particularly in the finals, what really surprised me is how good Steel and Kazu linked up for teamfight engages. Because there were some points during the finals where Steel was like just about caught out, like caught by a skill shot, and Kazu would just like immediately ping into the teamfight and said, "My time is now. My people need me." And they queued off of each other very, very well in sort of like the Hecarim set. So I'm looking to see if they can bring that same kind of decisiveness and not get cowed by the momentousness of the event. Because I think that'll be a really important factor to play around. Because the rest of the team, all of their carries have had some superb stats. I mean, again, going back to that Run It video, which you're talking about, Lexi, all three of Ebby, Arya, and Utapon turn up at some point in some of the better stats to measure.
Yeah, top 10 stats. It's like, yeah.
So I think for me, I don't really worry about those three. I worry about how Steel and Kazu are going to work together on the international stage, particularly against the likes of fucking Canyon and Barrel, and then like Vulcan and Blabber. And
Oh my days!
Yeah, no, and I think Infinity,
and Solid State and Solid Snake and specifically Ackerman.
Yeah, exactly. I think Solid Snake has been really good, and Ackerman is obviously. I think Ackerman plays more for lane. Don't get me wrong, but
he does.
So I think actually Sam talking about kind of like your up to your Rift Herald kind of portion of the game. I actually think that's the point where DFM are at most vulnerable. Actually, I think at First Herald,
potentially
First Herald is the fight which DFM will, if they're in a position to fight it, almost always win. When they've had Seraphine games, they've fought at First Herald every damn time, and they've won
every single game.
Every damn time. They're just really good at choosing their fights. Not so good at avoiding those fights. But when they're set up to win that fight at around about second, third dragon or at First Herald, they've been really, really stellar at snowballing off that. So that's what I'm interested to see against these teams in this group.
Perfect example. Last game of the finals was DFM versus V3. It was basically it was Kazu on set. It was Hecarim for was it Hecarim for Steel? Yes, pretty sure. He says, feeling a bit awkward about it. I think it was Hecarim for Steel. Yes, and then it was also just it was Seraphine, Arya Seraphine, and they just tore him to pieces. It was silly. Like, it was one of my favorite play-by-play casting moments of that series. I've got a really good clip from it, and like anybody looking back and go, that's just sick. And they do have those abilities with certain setup and champions to really punish around those things, and they're very practiced with it. And I think there is a world where, if we are going to go to that magical Christmas land that Lexi was talking about, and I don't think it's necessarily magical Christmas land, because I don't think it's that far out. I think you're probably talking, it's like, okay, it's a trip to the Arctic Circle, sure. But you can do that.
It's been done.
But it's been done, and with the right amount of prep and a bit of setting, and it's a hard trip, and it's a potentially risky trip, but it's a doable one, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that people like Ebby and Arya and Utapon are given resources to carry, and as long as Kazu isn't punished and can start making plays on his terms, then he's very, very good. And again, Steel is,
I'll say,
Steel has got a wide enough champion pool and is good at doing what his team needs of him, even if he's not necessarily that selfish with it all the time. To make people really, really kind of like to do a lot with it, particularly around those mid-game skirmishes where DFM can be so damn devastating. So, is there a world where Cloud9 get rolled because Arya isn't held down, and then they turn up to a Rift Herald fight because, Blabber and Vulcan will want to flip because that's their style? Then yeah, absolutely there is.
It's a double round robin. Like, anything can happen. And there's also and so something that we've talked about, and I would like to kind of end with this while we go through a few of the questions that our lovely listeners have asked for us, just kind of answering those to get properly put nails on the heads of all of it. Is I think if Damwon Kia can hopefully, and it's kind of funny for us, unless obviously we beat them, we want them to go 6-0. We actually would like Damwon Kia to go 6-0, unless they lose a game and go 5-1 to DFM. Because then that's good for us.
Yeah.
But outside of that, 6-0. Because that basically means everyone's playing with 2 losses, and it means C9 isn't anywhere near as far ahead as they should be versus everyone else. And there's a good chance Infinity could easily flip versus C9, and there's also a good chance in our eyes that DFM could flip one of the games off of C9. If you get that, tiebreakers come in, and then suddenly second place.
Yeah, it's the good old wildcard upset where it's a best of one. It's the last game of your group stage. One of these teams, which is looking further into the tournament, hasn't necessarily done their homework for this last game. The minor region comes in with a really good draft and stomps them. We said about Pain Gaming right earlier on. It's like, oh yeah, they have like 2 of these players which have upset in those situations. These games happen pretty much across the tournament, across these group stages. You expect 1 or 2 upsets. They always happen. Like, it just happens. Just by weight of numbers, one of them will do. We're just hoping that it comes in the favor of DFM.
Pretty much.
We pretty much to answer some of these questions around this group, because it makes sense to do this at this point. Now we've got Elfin going. What would you say DFM's chance of making out of these groups is?
15%.
I'm going.
15% would be my go. Yeah.
I'm going to go up to 20% because
bold.
I honestly think there's a good chance, looking at stuff, especially at a lot of the betting sites as well, because that's how I also gauge predictions for myself.
Fair.
If you,
Yeah.
a lot of them are like weirdly more even. And normally when the bots are more even, they don't quite know what to do and expect. Obviously everything is heavily favored down one Kia, and slightly favored C9, but Infinity DFM is like shrug shoulders. We have no idea. And when the sport betting bots don't know that, it makes me feel good about DFM.
Yeah. So I mean, so the things which I would take into my internal bot calculation are the fact that DFM have been more dominant in their own region.
You got a little blitz crank up there.
Yeah, that's one.
Blitzcrank Sam.
He's
our AI bot.
Miss hooks like you miss charms, right? So yeah, so I think that this group is quite slow. I think this group is quite slow and formulaic, and I think that works into DFM's favor because their laning phase is good enough to, if you're not going to blow them open in the first 5 to 8 minutes, like Sam was talking about up until First Herald, I think that works for DFM because their team fighting and skirmishing has been very, very good, and they have like this tri-pronged, the trident carry of team fighters of Ebby, Steel, and Utapon, and then Ebby, Ari, and Utapon rather, and Steel's obviously very good too. That it feels like DFM, when they get to about 15 minutes and beyond that, they are just very, very good. The question is how that stacks up against these other teams. DFM have only lost when they've been crushed early. I don't think C9 and Infinity will consistently do that. I don't think Infinity will do it in either of the games versus them. I think Down will do it both games and C9 will do it one. That's what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I would give DFM a 30% chance of taking one game off of C9. I think if they take, I think going 1-1, I'd say it's like a 30% chance. I think like it's because you are up against Blabber. I think that upsets things. Perks is obviously going to probably rattle Aria a bit, and I think Aria needs that experience of being rattled by a really good mid laner. So then the question is, so 30%, and what's the chance of going 1-1 or 2 against Infinity? I'd give it a coin flip. So then you have to coin flip. The 30% brings it down to 15% for me, and you're losing both games against down one. So I think DFM, 15%. But again, like I said, it's not really about MSI. You want a good showing, but then summer's where you really want to peak for play-ins with gang.
Agreed. And also just making C9 look weak is pretty good, because then it basically makes everyone in NA just go, oh fuck, how bad is our region if we're dropping a game to like Japan and Latin America? It's like, yeah, money doesn't solve all your problems. Crazy idea. It's wild. It's like people have been saying that for them for years. Pewdie over asks us as well. How would DFM fare against Damwon and C9? Would they be able to have close games versus them? We've already kind of started to cover that in pretty decent extent, but let's actually just be black and white about this. How will DFM fare against Damwon and C9? I'm going to go Damwon to you, Initialize, if I may.
Okay. So
actually, and then I'll go C9 to you, Nymaera, if that's okay.
So I think, so I'll take this little bit of the sentence and I'll focus on this for a second. Would they be able to? Yes. Certain check marks do have to be had, and again, this hits this kind of comment I've made a few times before, which is like, you have to be this tall to ride the international roller coaster, and a few of those things are, you have the mechanical ability, and you also can't chicken out at the last minute. You have actually got to get on the ride to play, right? And if you chicken out and go, no, I can't do this anymore, you won't enjoy that roller coaster very much. And for someone like Aria, or even somebody like Ebby, if these guys come in and kind of choke, don't play the way they normally do, play a little bit too safe, and don't come in with their normal pizzazz, then against Showmaker, against Khan, against Perks, these guys spell blood in the water. They are known as big game players. These guys have won international tournaments, and there is something about, big game stage performances, and I won't call it like a playoff buff, but there is, because there's this conversation I know Azael and some other people over on the dive and stuff have been having, which was more like, actually, well, there's sometimes a playoff debuff as well. Some players just don't play the same in big games. They're just not able to do it. And for Ari, it's a bigger hurdle, again, that actually, this is his first international tournament, never mind anything else. I mean, some of these guys are a bit more veteran and have done it time and time again. But if he comes in and he excels and he takes takes to it like a duck to water, there we go, sentence finally comes out, then, I mean, there's every chance these guys could step up and lane. They've certainly got the mechanical prowess not to get completely
Versus
rolled.
Damwon. Versus Damwon, though, in
I mean, like, again,
Showmaker.
to be able to have a close game, and I think the thing is, this season you have been able to keep Damwon close in the early games largely. It's been the mid games where they've been able to sort of run people over.
Okay.
And not that they haven't won early game stuff, but you can absolutely challenge them. And if Kazu isn't punished and Utapon can play safe, or they just focus around bot and do what they did sort of game 3 versus V3, I'd just say, screw it. Yeah, everyone knows it's the weakness, but we know it too. So we'll all just turn up and teleport in and make your life a living hell. Then you can do that too. So I think you come in with good drafts. You've got a versatile enough champion pool. You come in to play. Actually, these guys are strong laners. They can do it. And you don't get rolled early and you play to your game plan, then yes, I think you can play it close. I think the problem is it'll come to these mid-game areas, particularly, say, versus Damwon, who are exceptional team fighters around objectives and stuff, where maybe, say, Kazu and Steel haven't managed to keep up the vision game as well as they should have done. And that means that people come in a little bit unexpected and you overstep and you get punished. And I can guarantee that Kazu will do it once or twice a game.
Hopefully not 3 times versus Damwon, because then that almost puts the nail in the head before they get to do anything, right?
2 times might be enough
true.
versus Damwon.
So what about C9 then?
Yeah, well, this is the question: is can you pull it off multiple times versus C9? I think they're a team which actually have some similar flaws.
A bit more.
I think they have some similar flaws to DFM. In fact, actually, in terms of just being a bit too, just sometimes being a bit too arrogant. Sometimes going a little too deep, and they were punished by that eventually a couple of times by TL in the finals. It seemed like TL were the only team that were really doing that against them in NA. Whereas DFM, like they often are a bit more arrogant in the draft phase, but like come through to mid and late game, they haven't really had that same level of like flubbing in team fights that occasionally C9 have had. I think that the break point for this will be 2 things. One, how dominant is Sven and Vulcan going to be on an international stage? Because I think they have the potential to be the most lane-dominant 2v2 in this group, even. I think that Sven is an absolute star when he's on form. If he goes back to, his G2 era of dominance and having perks, on the roster definitely throws back to that. I think that the 2v2 against Kazu and Utapon could fall apart, much like we were worried about with Infinity as well. But so I think that bot lane, if that is stable, that definitely favors DFM. If you go for scaling rather than early pressure, and Utapon's able to farm up and Utapon is not, like just dying over and over, then the question is, how is Fudge going to turn up? Because the top side of the map, I actually think that Arya versus Perks, I would put that as nebulous because we don't know how Arya's going to turn up.
Slightly unfavored.
I would say it's going to be slightly even, actually. I think that Perks in lane has been decent, but I think he has been over-pushing sometimes. I think that he has given up some advantage, and actually, C9 were losing some 2v2s mid versus TL.
Interesting, because I could have a whole discussion with you about this, because I felt like this was just Perks' arrogance, just being like, lol, I can pretty much do anything in this region and probably make it work.
But if he does that versus Arya, I don't think that works out. Hell, we've been seeing Arya in the last couple of days.
But then Perks never shows arrogance in international, does he?
Oh, he has. We absolutely has.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, he has. I mean, he's had some great. Gone.
I mean, I'll also say that sometimes, like, it's like, what makes Perks great isn't necessarily his ability to dominate lane. He can do that, even if sometimes he hasn't. I think Al's definitely had a point there. But it's his ways that he plays side lanes, and actually, you say, look at G2 and what they're not doing as well these days is playing the cross maps as well as they used to. And I think like Perks' ability to set up particularly winning situations from mid game onwards, in terms of I just manipulate waves and roam around the map better than every other mid right now in NA, and I'll do it on every champion under the sun. And I'm a really good skirmisher and team fighter. I'm not a bad laner either, right? Like, all of those things are really, really good. And, actually, against Arya, who is actually a really strong laner, but also a very good roamer and skirmisher and stuff as well, maybe that's not so easy. So, yeah, I still probably favor Perks, but I can see Al's point that, maybe there's a world where Perks comes in a little bit regular season 4, isn't quite as on fire. But I doubt that, personally.
If you just look back to the LJL finals, I think there's a really good point around, obviously, Ace is the roaming player of the LJL. Like, he has basically made that his de facto thing. He's a Galio one trick in some points. Not anymore, really. He does it on a lot more champions. We saw the Twisted Fate now. But Arya was very comfortably matching someone that was very familiar around with a team that is very familiar around playing in other lanes. So actually, I think I will come back on my point, and I will actually go, no, I think I exactly see what you're saying, Alex. That's a very fair assessment, because if you're already able to play against someone that's whole job is just to roam, and you're beating them like very comfortably.
Then you
And
are
it's like,
effectively
okay, well,
playing,
this guy-
then you are winning. You are winning in the win condition battle. So just holding
Right.
them in lane is sometimes good enough. And I think particularly of all of the teams, I mean, obviously Arya is the biggest win condition versus Infinity because I think Cody is the player which falls behind in CS early. We saw what happened when Arya got early leads
Yeah.
versus Ace.
Yeah.
That shit doesn't fly. So I think
Doing
that
that
while
versus Perks,
Infinity
Joe
again
Maker's
have
up, pretty rough.
I think actually Infinity and C9 have similar strengths in mid and bot around that in terms of like their lane dominance and stuff like that. I think that Infinity could fall down to Arya just getting huge leads and then just being this ever-present threat if they do have a good matchup in mid. But versus C9, because that was the original question for this one, I think that it is going to be a question of how dominant Sven and Vulcan come into it and how early game Blabber is going to be focused. Because again, if you go towards first Herald fight, second, third Dragon fight, C9 have occasionally flipped at them, and DFM have typically won them. So I think that they would be. I think actually looking at this one, the question is, would they be able to have close games? Absolutely. I think they could win them.
I mean, this takes on perfectly to our next question from Melvin Izzle, who we know. Considering both Damwon and C9's relative weakness in the top lane and powerhouse in mid-jungle duos, how do you expect DFM to attack the top matchup, or do you predict alternating game plans to go head-to-head in mid-jungle? So obviously this is kind of hijacking on that point that we were talking about with the mid lane, and now kind of going, okay, but what about the top side? We've already mentioned the top side and how we think that's probably going to be DFM's main course of action, because that's where a lot of their power is still focused until obviously Gang comes back into the roster for Worlds, which is obviously how we're hoping things will go. And then we go, okay, well, DFM are now full Voltron, they have Exodia, and they can go for it. But at the moment, bot side is a little bit weaker for them. Do we think topside with Khan, with Fudge, is this something that Ebby and Steel can crack?
Ebby's a good Rumble player. Rumble's back in meta.
Yeah.
There are definitely some damaged top laners which could change the top drafts.
I think what I'll also say is this is a really interesting comment from Melvin in general, because I think he's got the fact he's asking is this a viable game plan? Absolutely. Is it something that DFM have done before? Absolutely.
Spring
Go watch 2020. Yeah, this is what they've done before. What I'll also say is
In
that
sync,
if
they
were,
did that.
what they often do is if they've been doing it, the split, it'll be like, okay, we'll throw one gank up, and if we get the kill, Ebby can run away from that. Like, once he's got the one kill, once he's got the one advantage on something like Gnar or Renekton or Camille when he's picked it. Like, Camille's a bit weird because obviously you want to continue offering attention. And I say Akali, they sometimes just left it into the 1v1. But if you do want to focus on this, particularly if something like Fudge or Khan are kind of left on weak side Scion duty, then you can go up there early, get an advantage, and then just let Ebby run away with it, because he is very good at them punishing people about, yeah, you just can't get to this wave. Like, it's how he plays. It's just CS denial. So if they do that, I mean, but then I suspect there is also an argument to say, well, just leave it to the 1v1 and trust that Ebby will win if he's given a decent matchup, because you know these teams aren't going to be focusing up there, and we don't need to tilt it further, and we'd be better served either getting Arya unlocked or sheltering Kazu.
I mean, a big thing and a part of what we're going to talk about next week, before the actual games happen, because Thursday is game day next week. But it's a point for that to kind of back us up is I think the alternating game play style is something that's very much going to be happening, because it's going to be one game a day, and DFM's first game is going to be Infinity. I'm not going to say anything more about that, but the fact is that we go Infinity, then C9, and then
working our way
back
up
to
the perceived power levels.
and then, yeah, it actually works out a lot better for DFM in this kind of spot, as opposed to going like Infinity, where they have down one and then they go back down to C9. We get it basically the best way, and we can have the most versatility. And then obviously you have groups days where you just run the gauntlet regardless. We start with Infinity, C9, down one. It just is kind of the best thing. I'm not going to go too much further, because, gentlemen, are there anything else you would like to put on this question? I'm just time conscious at the moment.
No, I'm good.
Okay. I shrimp for Galu. Of course, we all do. Seeing how competitive the mid lane players for Group C is, do you see Arya coming out and trying to show JP mids can shine, or will he play more safe? So this is kind of a playstyle question. And we already mentioned a fair bit about Arya and how he's done all these incredible stuff in the LJL. He could do this. He could match perks potentially. what kind of playstyle will we see from him? Or is it going to be that alternating playstyle like we've already mentioned? Do we think it's going to be kind of, he's going to sometimes be on Seraphine? He might sometimes be on Sylas.
Yeah, so I think the thing about Arya this split is that he's shown that he doesn't have to be the primary carry, so he doesn't have to be like have the priority drafting, and yet he still will be kind of the primary carry when he's playing something like a Syndra or, you know, again, something with a bit more high damage, and even his Orianna's been really, really good. He hasn't had to play as LeBlanc or as Sylas. I mean, LeBlanc this year was kind of crappy, but Sylas Sylas is definitely a champion that could make a return. I mean, I think that the thing about DFM is that they've never really kind of forced themselves to play to one player or play to one play style. They've just kind of done whatever.
No. They've just sometimes decided to play whatever the fuck they wanted then lost.
No, but like, I mean, in terms of like having Ebby go between stuff like the Gnar and the Renekton lane dominance and something more weak side like the Gragas, Utapon again playing more lane nullifying stuff into the harder carry games and Kai'Sa or whatever, Steel again being quite versatile. Arya's played everything from Seraphine again up into some of those higher DPS carries and whatever. I think that they'll just take it as it comes. I don't know what their meta read is. I expect them to try different things, though.
I mean, that's just it, right? Like, the Arya has been unlocked, and this is like a big thing that if you haven't gone over, go read Joshi's article. I will tag it again on Lol Ninja on where he says DFM only lose to DFM. We partially echo some of those thoughts and also disagree in our own way because, hey, that's good. It's not that we're a freaking just hive mind. There we go. Yeah, that's the term I like using. Where we're just going, oh yes, we're very good. LJL, very good. Everyone think LJL, very good, very good. But that is sometimes our Discord server, so hey, why not?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody likes it. I mean, ultimately, DFM and specifically Arya has shown that they can soar, fly, and accommodate and so much more. Initialize, you've got your finger in front of your face in a way that you want to say something. I've seen that face before.
I'm just kind of like again. I think Nymaera's probably covered it mostly, but I think there is something to that. I wonder how much of it will be on. Actually, the thing about this DFM squad is the fact that largely they can play however they want because they've got the players to be able to do it, and they're versatile enough in their player styles to do it. So I wonder to an extent whether it will be it'll be less about whether Arya is going to want to play safe or whether to as much as actually what's been working for us in scrims and what's actually getting us. What do we think is going to be the way to play the current meta? Because obviously we are on a different patch. So it might be one of the things where actually, you know what? I'm going to have to sit back and play some defensive picks in mid or whatever because we need to play towards Ebby being on Rumble every game because that's just really good right now. So we're going to play Morgana Rumble top and just like
unless he's going to play that. Mid, they can flex it between
right, exactly. Well, exactly. And so like sometimes it might just be like they might actually flex it around because
they could do the triple flex because I know Steel could play it.
Remember,
you just know he
played
could.
Rumble support last year.
So I wonder as well because it is a new patch and DFM aren't gated by necessarily saying like they are a top side focused team, etc. Whether it might actually not be as simple as like, do you see Arya doing this as much as actually what a DFM want to do on the day or versus a certain team?
We're gonna just have to wait and see. I mean, I'm excited. I think Arya definitely is going to have a decent showing. And honestly, one thing that really popped in my head that I'd love to end this kind of segment of the team DFM versus specifically C9 and Damwon Kia, as that's where most of the questions have been around. This is going to tell us, ladies and gentlemen, are DFM a humongous fish in a very small pond? Are they really good and they just aren't being pushed in their own region? Or are they actually more sizable and they're just the best of the Japan, but they're actually a bit smaller if they went to another region? This is going to be a huge benchmarking test. I know, Nymaera, you've thrown that word around a fair few times.
The words you use.
Because we don't know. And because V3 went to Worlds and then, well, they had that performance and then the roster blew up afterwards. We never got to see what it would have been if that roster got to stay together, because sadly, Boogie left for LLA. Archer had a split out, and now he's going over to LLA. And multiple members of the team left, and now we've only got Reiner and Ace from that roster, who were then able to make finals again. So at least they were showing that the roster is there. And talking about upsets, because that's what V3 did in playoffs. I'm very comfortable saying that one. Rascal Jester should have made finals, but mental boom. Heiner asks us, this is the upset question, ladies and gentlemen, we're ending it here. Do you see upsets happening now that we've covered all of the groups? And What are the coldest or hottest ones you can imagine? Given how little time the teams have to practice and just get used to the time zone / place in general, I feel upsets are more likely. So, gentlemen, upsets. We've talked about all these teams. We've talked about all of the groups. Where do we think some upsets could happen? I think, personally, we could easily see Mad Lions getting upset by other members of Group B. I'm not going to say who, because I don't know who would upset them. But Mad Lions last time internationally was a bit of a mental boom. Then it's like, well, anybody could theoretically beat them if Mad Lions repeat that same performance as last time from Worlds 2020.
Yeah, so the question says about like lack of practice time and stuff like that due to the international situation. Yeah, that's definitely, I think there is a chance
huge,
that
new
becomes a
patch,
factor.
all the rest of it. Yeah.
Are there any other upsets or anything?
I suspect the least likely one is in Group A, where I just think realistically it's RNG, UOL, and Pentanet. Like, there's less room for upset there. I think Group C, there are some play style.
Actually, can I push back on you on that and have a quick conversation?
Yeah.
What about if it actually looks like Unicorns of Love have fallen off a bridge and Pentanet are just the better team? Is that still an upset? Because we would have this
quad round robin.
Because we go in with this idea, but if we just see 2 games through and we just like, oh, Unicorns of Love haven't shown up and Pentanet are just the better team, then you just go, oh, well, they're just the better team. It's not really an upset at that point, is it?
No, so the thing for me is that because it's a quad best of 1 round robin, you're playing twice as many games against the teams. This is not the kind of thing where one win is often going to be the upset. Because an upset victory is not an upset in the group, right? Because if you just like I said, I think that UOL can take 1 game off RNG. I think PGG will take 1 game off of UOL. That's not enough to upset standings. So for me, I think, like, do I see upsets happening? Unlikely, because there are more games to kind of even them out, to nullify them.
In Group A, right?
Group A.
Yeah.
Group B, I think, as we've all kind of alluded to, is the one where we've got a lot more question marks, because Mad is probably is weaker than Down 1 and RNG. I think that was quite safe to say based on the eye test and other stuff.
I think Mad might even be weaker than C9 in some spots.
I think that if C9 are made into Group B, that'd be a huge group of death. I think there's a whole load of ways that can mess up.
Yeah,
I completely agree. I think the other thing is, like, I think that's fair to shout. I think I'll also say there is a world where if there were going to be upsets as well, potentially Group C, where there are some big stylistic differences. How Down 1 play the game, how DFM play the game, how C9 play the game, how Infinity play the game are quite varied, and like particularly say for C9. I know Alfari was talking about it on the second part of the Reflections interview he did with Thorin recently, where he was saying, look, Blabber and Fudge just went for a flip in topside, and because I didn't have the synergy with Nymaera, it worked out. But, actually, if that had been Santorin, like, we would have challenged there, right? And I think we could have won some of those. And obviously, that's a certain amount of bias because, it's hindsight, and also, like, you back yourself in that kind of situations.
Well, she did.
But Blabber is in that kind of LPL hard carry ganking mindset for junglers. Like, he's the kind of guy, a little bit like Tian, who would pick Lee Sen and, or Ning and just like, yep, we're going for the gank. And yes, it's a bit of a flip. Yes, I'm expecting to 2v2 here, but we'll win it because we're better. And that's, and Blabber's good enough to do that. Like, he's a really exceptional jungler. Like, he's won MVP a couple times in a row because he's really, 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 really,
But
really
that's
good
MVP in NA. That's not MVP in Korea, is it? Right?
Well, exactly.
Or China.
But exactly.
Or even EU.
There's something to that. And even then, I think Blabber largely passes the eye test. I think he's a very good jungler.
Absolutely. I'm not trying to flame him.
Yeah, but exactly. But my point being that, actually, he is a guy who will go for flips, who will go for the,
Thank God,
the big
by
plays.
the way.
Yeah,
the regions needed it.
Well, exactly, but I think DFM, but that kind of thing potentially means if some of these teams can basically take the skill check and win it, because that's what Blabber likes to do, then you can punish C9. Like, hell, that's what happened in the game 1 of the finals versus Liquid, is C9 had a comp that was kind of very early game focused. They got a crazy lead. It was looking good, even if there was some comp issues. I'll call that out earlier. But then Blabber flashes in on Udyr into a blind bush and dies. Like, and then the whole game gets turned around. And, like, that's the kind of thing where, like, it's what makes C9 really good. And I won't necessarily call this I won't call this a flaw necessarily. I'll call it a trait. Because sometimes it makes C9 incredible. Sometimes it puts them in a bit of a hole where some of these players just like to take the skill checks. And they win because they're good. But on the other hand, you take the skill check, and that can be risky. So there's a world, I think, where C9 will potentially take those skill checks and upset Down 1 or lose to people they shouldn't as well.
To fully recap us, Group A is probably not going to be much of an upset. We'll find out which out of Pentanet and Unicorns of Love are the better team. We're all assuming it's Unicorns of Love, but if Pentanet show up and Unicorns look a bit more temperamental, it'll go either way. I still think UOL. I'm just putting it out there because I always like to be what's the phrase?
I don't know. Actually, I'm not sure what you're going
Devil's
for.
advocate. I always love to play
gotcha.
devil's advocate.
Right.
So that's where I was going with that. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, it's probably just going to be UOL and Royal Never Give Up getting out. No upsets realistically. Group B, difficult to call. Looking forward to doing that maybe live with you gentlemen, where we try and predict that one, because I have no idea where I'm truly going. I'm going to need to definitely go back to the barracks and figure that one out, because I'm outside of Mad Lions. Oh, I feel like it could go anyway. And the problem is Unified not being there. It's like, oh god, I don't know. And then obviously we've got the biased Group C where we all want DFM to make it out.
I think Infinity DFM is close. If they had Gang, I would say DFM solid third.
Yeah.
I think, and then pushing for an upset to second, because it would be an upset. But I think as it is right
honestly,
now,
honestly, at that point, I don't think Akame and White Lotus is much better than Utapon and Gang.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what we're waiting. That's what we're waiting for in plans. But as it stands right now, it is pretty much again pool order with a coin flip between Infinity and DFM. As Lexi started the group out with, it's pretty much come back to it.
Sadly, I didn't want it to be like that, but that's how it is. Gentlemen, we have reached the end of this very long podcast episode. But we've had a lot to talk about. As always, ladies and gentlemen, before I go over to my co-hosts and give them opportunities to say anything and everything before we end the show out, as always, you can find this podcast on all audio streaming platforms that you can find out there. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. It does help. I assure you the algorithm does enjoy us a lot more when you do that. And also, if you are interested in joining the LJL crew, that's myself, Initia1ise and Nymaera, as either a caster, admin / coordinator, a graphics designer, or a social media person. Caster, both color and play-by-play. Not host. No, that's me. Only me. But only me, or the other two, to be honest, or the other two idiots that I share this lovely space with are also allowed to be hosts. I am allowing that. But who knows? Maybe we'll allow some of the new blood coming in. But as always, applications are still open for the next 2 days. So if you are interested in joining us, you still have a chance. Once that is all over, in case you're wondering, we will be giving everyone a message, a shout out, and then we will be trying to interview and communicate with everybody and relaying everything else out there. But with that all said, Initia1ise and Nymaera, anything else you want to say? Nymaera first. Let's go.
Let's go, MSI. Ooh, Aria.
Let's
down
in. Hopefully not. No. Initia1ise? Oh, no, back to Nymaera.
Yeah,
back to Nymaera. No, back to Nymaera.
No, I was just about to say, you might catch me on Summoning Inside at some point, because I might be talking about LJL. So get this with a couple of different faces, and me going through all of this again. So watch out for next week.
Yeah, absolutely. But now to you, Initia1ise. Apologies.
Well, that's stolen the thunder, hasn't it? How do I beat that one? Go DFM. I'm excited to see them go. Kazi, don't hit me. Okay.
There we go. Don't Summoner Insight and potentially content coming over the next week. LJL is being represented by maybe the best team that we could have hoped for, and hopefully will evolve to become even better. International stage time for our rookie player of Aria, and Kazu actually gets his first and probably only taste of actually as a player on the international stage. So that's a good little token over to him, because he's been there as a coach. Now he gets to play there. But from myself, Initia1ise, Nymaera, and our lovely community that asked us all those incredible questions, thank you so much for listening or watching, and we'll see you all very, very soon.